Members are seated, and we have excellent attendance tonight, gold stars and all that. So I'll call the meeting to order and find my agenda because I was busy talking. Could we have the roll call?
Mayor Peterson? Here. Present. Member Bennett?
Here.
Member Tesler?
Present.
Member Nanke?
Here.
Member Clausen?
Here.
Member Dickey?
Here.
Member Thomas?
Here.
Member Cannon?
Yes.
Member Clem's not here. Member Berger?
Here.
Member Kylowite?
Here.
Member Summers?
Here.
Member George?
Here.
Member McEvely? Absent. Member Strozit?
Oh, here.
Member Motley?
Present.
Member Vick?
Here.
Member Pruitt?
Here.
Thank you. And let's see, could I have Member Pruitt lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I would like to welcome from Ward 8 our guest member, Don Homuth, who is a co-chair of the West Salem Neighborhood Association. So I've had the pleasure of working with him at our neighborhood chairs meetings. Thank you for filling in.
Thank you.
And I know that Councilor Clem has already told you that you may participate and ask questions, you just may not vote.
I assure you I shall be suitably reticent.
Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Point of order.
Yes?
Nick, I'd like to move that we correct our current agenda at number 3A for the minutes. The correct date would be April 13th, not April 11th.
All right.
Second.
All right. So it's been moved by Member Motley and seconded by Member Bennett to approve the minutes as corrected. Any discussion? Yes.
I will not participate because I was not here.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Correspondence.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Budget Committee members. I'm Deborah Neville, the city's budget officer. This evening, we do not have any correspondence. If we had any, it would be at this point in the agenda. Moving on to handout material, we have a couple of items for you. One is another errata sheet to have you consider. This is a process. This is called General Fund de Jour Loan to Urban Renewal Agency. Ever since the passage of Measure 4750, as outlined in ORS Chapter 457, it authorizes urban renewal agencies to incur debt. And since that time, we have incurred debt within our urban renewal agency for each of the urban renewal areas that we're collecting tax increment funds. In the past, we have used financial institutions to execute the loan. We're now moving into an area where we would like to utilize city funds and simplify the process for execution, and thus saving some funds for the urban renewal agency by doing so. In order for us to execute the loan within our own boundaries, our own organization, we need to borrow money from a fund that has sufficient cash to do so. The general fund has sufficient cash at the time that we are anticipating executing the loans, which would be in January, these short-term loans. So what we're asking to do is increase the general fund appropriation by $3.6 million in order to provide appropriation authority to execute the loan. It's a short-term loan. The monies would be borrowed one day and returned 1 or 2 days following that borrowing. The advantage to the general fund is they'll pick up a few $100s of interest, but it's actually of advantage to the Urban Renewal Agency. It's mutually beneficial to both agencies, and it will be more expedient than working with an external financing agency. So we're asking for your approval to increase the general fund budget, materials and services category, by $3.6 million. On the other hand, we'd also suggest that the general fund revenue be increased by $3,600,000, 300. Madam Chair?
Is there Member Nanki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move staff recommendation.
It's been moved by Member Nanki and seconded by Member Kessler. Staff recommendation.
In regards to errata 3.
Yes. Before I call on Member Summers, do you have anything to say on your motion?
No, Madam Chair.
Member Summers?
I'm looking this over and it's difficult at first to
Thank you.
It was very difficult at first to understand, and as I look at this, it appears that if we do this quite extensively, we're going to make our general fund look like it's going up and down from year to year, when in reality this is only a 1 or a 2-day transaction. These are not real revenue funds, as I understand the way this is written. I think there's probably a better way to do this, probably a more legitimate audited that will reach our audit requirements to do this. And I hate to think of coming in here one year and saying, well, the general fund last year was $1.2 million or $102 million. Next year it's $108 million. The following year we didn't have as many internal loans. It's down to $98 million. And I think the trend line of actual spending is more accurate than putting funny money in the total.
Ms. Neville, can you address that issue?
Well, you're right, Mr. Summers. In fact, the amount of the de jure financing, the short-term loan, could vary from year to year. And the way we've structured it now, it will, in fact, look like our general fund expenditures are going to be $3.6 million greater because of the loan. And they will not be used toward operations. It's going to be used strictly as a financing tool to provide the ability for the Urban Renewal Agency to use the extra tax increment dollars that they've received to use for projects.
Yeah, are there any better ways to do it?
Well, I don't know. This is the way we've just recently established this methodology. There may be, I'm going to have to talk to our accounting staff, with whom we have the chief accountant is on vacation this week, and there is perhaps a way we could do it on a cash basis, but I'm not certain if that's going to work, and this is the way we have done it in the recent past. We borrowed money from the Fleet Services Division earlier this year in order to execute the 10-11 du jour financing. So it's something I would be happy to pursue further, but I don't have an immediate answer this evening.
Would it be appropriate to defer the decision on this for a short period of time to find out if there is a better way to do it?
Yes, we can do that. We can bring it back at the next meeting if you wanted more analysis.
And I'd be happy to check into that.
Member Motley and then Member Cannon.
Yes, I'm noting that the two numbers are different. I'm curious, what's the $300 difference?
That's the interest earnings?
It's a day of interest?
Correct.
Okay. And comment on the question from Mr. Summers. I agree with that. I think this could be done as an interfund loan and recorded as such, not affecting the expenditure sheet. And I would support the motion if it were amended to indicate that the accounting won't impact revenues or expenditures, rather show as a transfer and repayment.
Yes. Ms. Neville, can I just clarify something with you? What's the timing for when this would happen
We are looking
this next time?
at doing this particular loan that we're talking about tonight in January. So
Yes.
there'd be plenty of cash on hand.
So it would be done in January and then repaid the next day.
Correct.
Right.
Member Cannon, oops, did you have?
I would move that we continue this matter to a time certain to the next regularly scheduled Budget Committee meeting to hear from the city's accountant.
Second.
Is that a substitute motion?
It is.
Well, actually, it takes priority over all other motions because I'm continuing the matter for a specific time.
Okay. We have a second? We do have a second. So any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
All right, moving on to the other handout information. We have provided a response to a Budget Committee question regarding the history of the water and sewer franchise fee. So there is a table showing where the money has been transferred to over the life of our transfer experience. And then following that is a written narrative on the history, once again, in narrative form, the history of the water and sewer franchise fee, and this is, again, requested as a result of Budget Committee inquiry. The next item on the agenda is the summary of Budget Committee actions through April 13th. That's item number 6. And this is a standard report that we prepare as we move through the Budget Committee cycle in order to document our proceedings and what's happened and where we are. So right now we have 2 attachments to this report. Attachment 1 shows the financial changes that the committee approved last Wednesday. And also on this list are information and reports requested by the Budget Committee. It's a tracking device. As we add correspondence, there's also a list that will provide that information. And if we have wish list items, we attach that same information to this report. As we had none of those items, they are not attached. Madam Chair?
Thank you. Moving along to goal setting and policy discussion. Member Motley, and then Member Clausen.
Thank you. As with our previous conversation, Chairperson, my understanding is that our operating rules or parameter are different from previous years in that we haven't identified when the group will entertain additions or changes or whatever to the want list, et cetera. And I'd like to ask that the chair open discussion for when we should be having want list items posted, discussed, et cetera.
Member Motley had told me that he has a wish list item that he wants to make a motion on, but we have not discussed as a group whether we are going to do those with each department or at the end of the session at the last meeting, or how we're going to handle that. Do we have any preferences amongst the group? Yes, Member Nanki?
Yeah, I think historically we've always put those on the list either, as that department or section's budget came under review or anytime thereafter. It might be confusing if someone were to bring one in front of, the presentation on that department, but it's always been in the discussion, review, and recommendation. It kind of insinuated that that's where if you wanted to throw something else out in regards to that budget fund, then that's where it would come in.
All right. So would that be all right with you, Member Motley, to make your motion after when we get to that part of the agenda after the department has given their presentation and we've had public testimony?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. I didn't have any given preference. I just wanted to know, do you want me to save these up until our last meeting, or should I, start speaking up?
It's good for us to think about that as we're moving along. All right, Member, I think I had something else. Oh, I know. a tradition that has been in recent years is not a rule, but you are encouraged if you add something to the wish list to look for a way to pay for it out of the budget. Yes. Member Nancy?
Yeah, just one other, and I would encourage you not to save them up to the last meeting, because then there would be very little opportunity to find offsetting revenues with which to support those additions. So the more time, the better.
I actually agree with that. It's just that policy has been all over the map through the years. Member Clausen, you've been waiting patiently for...
Are we done with that then?
Yes, I think we are.
Sorry. So I would like to make a motion and then speak to that motion if I may. I'd like to make a motion that the Budget Committee convenes soon after the economic forecast at the end of the year in order to recommend policy regarding the level of the beginning fund balance for consideration by Council.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Clausen and seconded by Member Tessler by a hair. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, thank you. So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot as we go through the budget. This is my first time through this cycle, and we got a very good presentation in November, I believe it was, with an economic forecast, and I had some strong opinions afterwards, and I know lots of other people probably did too. And I didn't feel like there was a good, appropriate venue in order for us to give feedback or some suggestion to staff on what to do with that information and how that applies to the next year's budget as they go through forming that budget. As we all know, they put an inordinate amount of time and effort into this, starting September, as I found out, is when they really start the next year's budget. And for them to make the presentation of budget to us at this point and then say we didn't like something about the level of the beginning fund balance, it is difficult at best to express that now and then ask staff to go back and change the way the budget is structured at this point. It's also difficult for us to have a meaningful conversation about what changes might need to be made now when we're going through looking closely at individual line items. It's hard to pull back up and have the 30,000 foot elevation view of this. So what I would like to see would be a meeting where we as a budget committee convene maybe a couple weeks after the budget, the economic forecast, and we have a conversation and make a recommendation to council, or we'd have to work this out maybe to council's finance committee about what the beginning fund balance of the following budget should look like, or I guess I should say the end fund balance of the budget in creation should look like, in order so that we would have substantial time to make these conversations and make these things happen before the budget shows up to us. So that's my thought.
Member Bennett?
Thank you. I think it's a really interesting idea, and certainly as an advisory piece of information, I'm sure it'd be helpful to the manager as she puts together her budget. The concern I have about somehow locking in a final number is I can't tell what I just got rid of. You know, someplace along the line, it's a very difficult balancing act, and there are consequences to setting that number that would be invisible to us. And we would then spend our time as a budget committee looking back in time at each line item, figuring out what to add back. Or that would be a different way of approaching it. It's an interesting one, but the manager, I feel, has proven to me we set a kind of general policy relative to the ending fund balance, and she meets it, and then also gives us her best judgment on accomplishing the goals and maintaining the program. Do you see what I mean? I would have real difficulty if I didn't understand what I was cutting by putting it into a cash box.
Okay, Member Clausen and then Member Summers.
If I could address Member Bennett's concerns. I agree with that concern. I think the key to this idea is that this meeting would really need to be that 30,000-foot look at it. And I think what it is probably what it boils down to is another look at our ending fund balance policy on a year-by-year basis, because things are so volatile right now. Even if the economy bounces back tomorrow, our revenue as the city is not going to bounce back for years to come, just with the way our revenue is structured. And so even if the economy bounces back, we really need to be watching that ending fund balance still and making sure we're staying strong as a organization. So I think the idea is probably more geared towards the budget committee getting a little bit more hands-on type of recommendation for the council to evaluate that ending fund balance policy on a more regular basis.
Member Summers and then Member Cannon. I may have called you out of order, but go ahead, please.
It's, as I understand it, it's the Budget Committee's job to review the budget as presented by staff, but staff before that point receives guidance from the governing body, which is the council. And the governing body should be indicating to staff early on what they expect the range of this beginning balance to look. And that guidance, I think, if it hadn't been given in the past, should be given by council.
Member Cannon?
What did you just say? Yeah, there we go. All right. That follows up what I was going to say. I agree, but not having the budget committee involved. I think that's a matter of council. Your instincts are perfect, and I agree with them. And the manager does provide council with an ongoing briefing as we go along through the year as to where, I'm going to use the word she is, but where her budget is as we go through. I would be happy to support your motion if the word was council rather than the budget committee. And then as a council, through the auspices of the mayor and the city manager, we would look at that ending balance or beginning balance. It depends on which way you look at it. But hopefully we're already doing that. And Councilor Nanke, I would like your thoughts as to what the history is. You have the longest running history than anybody in the room.
Member Nanke, did you have something to say?
Sure, and I'd just like to say, a lot of times to the city manager, we'll basically ask what the implications are of, we want this kind of an ending balance. What does that actually do to us as an organization? And is it like cutting deep through the muscle and down into the bone, or what are the ramifications of that? Looking out forward over a couple of years and knowing when, and is it smarter to do something drastic now than drag it out? So we have those discussions on an ongoing basis, but I do think we need to actually talk about out years now, because we're seeing another out year cycle that's going to be damaging.
By November every year, we have a pretty good estimate of what that fiscal year's ending fund balance is going to look like, as well as, if we kept current services, what the next 2 years' revenue and expenditures are likely to be. So with that conversation, which I think would be a very welcome conversation with council, I would be able to give you a pretty good idea at that point of what 14 million, if you wanted an ending fund balance of 14 million, what that would look like compared to 12 million or compared to 15 million. So it wouldn't be, it's not 100% accurate yet, because we still have, 8 or 9 months to go in the fiscal year, but we can tell you pretty well by then what the next 3 years are going to look like.
Member Nanke?
Yeah, if I may just add in one other piece, and this year's kind of different than many previous years, where as a new council came in, we would have goal setting mid to late January, early February at the latest, to try to get input from the council prior to, at least to where we could get some impact into the budget document. It was being finalized at the city manager's level, and we haven't even finalized our council goal setting session yet, so we'll see how they interconnect. But that is one other difference where we could bring that kind of thing up in goal setting if we saw something that, you know, was like, oh, we really don't like this. We could do that modification before it goes out to everyone.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Member Clausen, do you want to stick with that motion? Did you want to?
If I may, I'm thinking as hard as I can here. Member Cannon has a good point. It is a policy decision made by council. My motion was to have the budget committee assemble so that the citizen members, what I was thinking was the citizen members would have a chance to be input, and so that this body doesn't just assemble for the 2-month budget period. I don't know, I guess I'd like to hear maybe some citizen input. Member Summers was kind of echoing that, it seems like. If the citizen members don't feel like it's valuable, then I would probably postpone the motion and bring it up on council floor. Would that make the most sense?
Is there any further comment?
I think the motion could be amended now if you wanted just to have your same motion but say city council. That's another option.
Would it bind the council coming from budget committee? Or I guess it does, there's no such thing as binding.
Or just rescind it and bring it up to the council already.
Yeah, probably as a council item.
I think,
Okay.
I would agree. I think withdrawing it would be the
Okay.
simplest.
I'm fine with withdrawing it. I don't see any nodding heads from the
Does the second
Citizen side.
concur? Was it Member Tesler? Were you the second?
What do you think? Okay,
Okay, it is withdrawn.
it's out. We'll bring it up next week.
Thank you. All right. Now, I'm sorry.
I have a question about the documents that are on our table when we come in. So many times there are memos and the agenda and so on and so forth. And tonight I see 2 documents that are here. I would like very much for whatever documents come onto our table at Budget Committee meetings to be clearly identified as to which department they're from and dated as to when they're presented to us. And if they're not from within the city, then I think they should clearly indicate who they're from and be dated, and maybe there should be a process for receiving this sort of documentation.
I see. Your point is you don't know if this is from the department or a citizen or.
Right,
Yes.
right.
That's a good point.
And I think that is a good point. I believe these are from Mr. Beasley.
Okay, then I think that they should
Just so
be
you know, for this evening.
All right, thank you.
from, I think, Linda?
Yes, from Mr. Beasley, a citizen. These 2 charts. Is he in the room?
He's signed up to speak, so.
Yeah, he is here, I see now.
And he's signed up to speak, so I'm sure he'll address these when his turn comes.
But my point still is that it becomes a record, but it's a record from an anonymous person at this point because we don't know who it's from, and there's no documentation as to who it's from, and it's not dated. And my concern is that this becomes a body of knowledge or a body of information, but we don't even know if it's reliable because we don't know the source. So I just throw that out.
Member Cannon, did you?
I have another item for item number 7 under discussion.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
In January of this year, as part of the Jobs and Transportation Act of 2009, we had a 6% increase in gas tax, which also included diesel fuels and went into effect, which was an addition to the revenue that we'll receive. And one of the things that I wish to look at, and this may be a matter that this is under discussion, so I may bring this to council or I may bring this up later, but it seems to me that the money that we're receiving from this new and additional tax should be dedicated to asphalt purchase. So that would be for the repair and maintenance of existing roads and that it would be dedicated, and it wouldn't go for administration, it wouldn't go for new people, it wouldn't go for things other than what the legislature clearly intended as part of the Jobs and Transportation Act of 2009. So here we have new money coming, and my thought is either with this body or with council to dedicate these dollars that we're getting to actual asphalt for the repair and maintenance of our current street system. So that was just under general policies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anything, oh, yes, Member George?
I just want to say I support Member Cannon's comment on that, because that came up last week about the fact that there was some individual was hired as a result of, like when I asked about that someone was hired, you know, so that's why I said, you know, I don't want to see this all burned up by putting, you know, by getting more people, but I thought the intended use was what Member Cannon brought up, so I just want to say I support that.
Member Nenke, and then Member Motley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we'll probably need that just to pay for the increase in fuel prices, and that's where it should go to first, and then whatever's left can go to asphalt.
Good point. Member Motley.
Thank you. I agree with all the comments about the increased fuel tax. I also agree with Mayor Peterson's concern with the papers on the desk. Lastly, I believe that documentation, presentations, et cetera, that come in from the outside should be treated as correspondence and duly logged and distributed. If they don't, I don't think we should be looking at them.
Those are all good points. I think the technical challenge for staff will be that folks just come in and put things on desks. So they'll have to work out how to monitor that. Yes, Member Nenke?
Yeah, in that vein, I look at it as communication associated with testimony. If people are here early and they put it on your desk, if it's labeled, you know that they're going to be speaking on it. Otherwise, it's very distracting when someone comes up to speak and then starts handing out material because you're passing stuff along and you're actually missing what they're saying as well. So I prefer it to hit my desk earlier as long as it's identified that there'll be testimony on it, because then it becomes part of the record as it's, you know, distributed during the meeting.
That's good. I agree. I have to admit that the sooner I can get written material, the better, but it's also very helpful to know how it was generated, what its source says. Do we have anything else under goal setting and policy discussion? Yes, Member Motley?
It's probably the entirely wrong place, but I want to thank the Easter Bunny for the candy.
Yes, thank you, Member Cannon, for the candy. I got extra. Number 8, this public testimony section is only for future budget items. So if it is something that is on tonight's agenda, your testimony will be taken at that time. Is anyone here to comment on future budget items? All right. I think we are ready to move right along to the review of the general fund budget. And these are pages 1 through 120 in your big budget book.
Yes, and Madam Chair, the way we'll do the presentation this evening is we'll have each department head come and do the presentation for you. Our intent, unless you'd like to do otherwise, is to go through police, fire, community development, and city manager's office, and then stop for questions, testimony, any comments, and then do the internal service departments after that point. So if that works, we'll go ahead and get started with our police chief, Jerry Moore.
Thank you. And again, the agenda as it's laid out is that we will hear the department head's presentation, and then we won't do one department at a time. Thank you, Chief Moore.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Chair Strozit, Mayor Peterson, Council, Budget Committee members. It's nice to be back with you once again. My name is Jerry Moore. I'm the Chief of Police of the Police Department, and we're going to give you a brief overview of our budget this evening. I brought with me my staff this evening, so if I can't answer the questions, I'm sure one of them are able to. You know, providing police service to a community of over 150,000 is always a challenge. To do that in the police department, we are made up of 190 sworn police officers and 110 civilian employees. I can tell you that the men and the women of the police department are very proud to be able to provide you public safety services in this community. I am happy to report that most major crimes continue to decline in Salem. We're fortunate that that is occurring, but we always need to remain vigilant at that, to do the things to make sure that that continues to occur. We know we're often asked why crime either goes up or down, and there can be many reasons why that occurs, but I think some of the most important reasons are that we have an educated community on how to take care of themselves, and we have a dedicated police force that does a really good job. And we're going to do all we can to make sure those things continue. The slide in front of you gives you an indication of what violent crime and property crime has done in the last several years. The Salem Police Department is the second largest municipal police organization in the state, and I do consider us to be a full-service organization. We're very fortunate that the council and our city has provided us the resources over the years to deal with the many issues that we are tasked on responding to. We listen to the concerns of our citizens, and we try and set our organization up that in a way that we're best able to respond to those situations. I think when you think about our police department, you think about, first of all, our patrol officers who you always see out on the street, and of course they do a great job. And then the other bigger portion of our organization is, of course, our investigations division. So our patrol division, our investigation, is what you would traditionally think of in a police agency. I can tell you I'm very proud of both of those groups because they do a great job, and as an example, our investigations division, our detectives, they solve most every major crime that occurs in this city, and I can tell you we have not had an unsolved homicide in over 12 years, which is a great thing. But as this slide depicts, I think our police department goes much further than that. We are fortunate to have special units that are designed to respond to specific needs of this community. Just as some examples, our street crimes unit and our drug activity response stream, who focus on drug and neighborhood issues. Our downtown team, which focuses on the downtown core and the parks and the many issues that come when many people congregate in one area, such as our downtown. They deal with livability issues, just as our street crimes unit, our DART team does. Our crime prevention unit does a great job in educating our community so that hopefully they are not victimized by crime. And then another unit that I'd like to highlight is our domestic violence response team, which responds to anyone that's a victim of domestic violence and walks them through the process, and really does a good job in trying to make sure they are not victimized a second time. And those are just a few examples of what I think really makes up the core of our police department and the many things that they do. You know, in the police department, we understand that these are tough financial times, and we really do try and be good stewards of taxpayer money. In this year's budget, we have not added any programs or projects, and almost all the increases in our budget you will see have to do with increased personnel service costs, which I think every department in our city is facing. We've done our best over the years to reduce overtime, and we seek and utilize grants as often as we can to make sure that we try not to impact the general fund. If you were able to see it, I would tell you that almost all of our significant equipment purchases in the last several years have come through grants and have not impacted our general fund. We've worked hard this year to reconfigure the COPS grant that we were awarded last year, which provided us 4 officers. We've reconfigured it in a way that it will actually retain officers in a couple cases, and in another case it'll add a couple officers. But by the time that federal grant expires, it will provide over $1 million of funds to provide for our police officers' salaries. We are improving the use of technology to try and work smarter and more efficiently. Examples of some of our new technology would include in-car video in many of our cars, which will be able to record our officers' contact with citizens. We've added automatic license plate readers last year, which enables us to identify stolen vehicles and vehicles of interest. We are utilizing grant funds. We're looking at adding electronic citation forms, which are equipment which allows us to interface with our computer system, and we don't have people doing double entry and such, and that certainly helps our records section and the municipal court. And of course, all of this technology adds some challenges to us, and it does require a great deal of expertise to install, integrate, and maintain those systems. And so what you will see in this year's budget is we have requested and added one technology person for our police department, and that is included in our budget. During the 06-07 budget process, the council goal of 2008 was to look at adding a new public safety facility, and through the work of the Sustainable Cities group this year, we have actually been able to come up with some plans and some options to give to council in the future. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, the work of that group is depicted there, and actually adds the possibility of a new police facility located on this campus. There's about $192,000 in this budget, which is included to begin the process of determining whether that added facility would actually be able to take place. I will tell you, as I'm sure the Chief Niblock will in the fire services, there are challenges, and unfortunately in the police department, we have many of those, and that is our ability to continue to decrease crime and respond to the crimes that occur. Unfortunately, crime does occur in the city, and we are constantly challenged to do that response. Other challenges that I think we're looking at is the loss of funding of 3 of our school officers. Those are our SROs that are in the schools. We are, because of budget cuts in the school system, we're going to lose 3 officers there. Changes that have occurred in Marion County and the jail system are also going to impact us, in that many of the people that we have in the past lodged in our jail, we will not be able to. And not only does this impact our police officers on the street and the community, but it also impacts the ability of our municipal court to have any impact on offenders, and especially repeat offenders. As I have told you in the past, we are also challenged again and continuously with issues of the homeless and mental health issues. As cuts in other services throughout the state and federal agencies occur, we are tasked again and again to respond to issues that sometimes we are ill-equipped to do, but we are usually the first responders to those that are in mental distress, and that is certainly a challenge. I can tell you, though, that we are up to accepting that challenge, and we will do everything we can to work with our partners, both regionally and locally, to try and have positive impacts on all of those issues. You know, my staff and I constantly assess the city's law enforcement needs and deploy our resources where we think they are best needed. And I can tell you we very much appreciate the confidence that our city manager and the council has given to us to allow us to put our resources where we think they are most needed. That is really important to us. I will close by telling you that I'm very proud of my agency. They do a great work. They are dedicated, and they care about the work they do. This last slide depicts a few of our major accomplishments, which I believe could go on, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have later in the process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief Moore. And our next?
Next will be Fire Chief Mike Niblock.
Welcome, Chief
Thank you.
Niblock.
Good evening, Budget Chair Strozic, Mayor Peterson, councilors, and members of the Budget Committee. I'm Mike Niblock, and it's a pleasure to serve as your fire chief. Before I begin my presentation this evening, I want to acknowledge and thank the employees of the fire department for their dedication and service that they deliver every day to the citizens here. I also want to call attention to the teamwork that exists within the city. We have excellent relationship with other departments, and we really appreciate that we all function as a team here in Salem. I've got my management team with me here as well this evening to assist in answering questions when we complete, and I want to especially acknowledge my management analyst, Rachel Hostetler. She puts our budget together and really does an excellent job, and I don't want any other department heads trying to steal her. Tonight I will present the Fire Department's General Fund proposed budget for fiscal year 2011-12. I'll highlight 4 major accomplishments from last year and identify 3 significant changes for next year. The Fire Department operations are supported by 2 funds, the General Fund and the Emergency Medical Services Fund. Tonight's presentation will focus on divisions and operations supported by the General Fund. I'll begin with the Administration Division. Through the Office of the Fire Chief, this division supports all Fire Department activities through the development and implementation of policies and procedures and the establishment of organizational expectations by clearly defining the mission, vision, and values of the organization. This division has 6 full-time employees. Our largest division, Emergency Operations, is charged with the protection of life, property, and the environment. This division is responsible for maintaining staffing at 11 fire stations that are strategically located throughout our city. Our response area covers nearly 79 square miles, and in 2010, fire crews responded to over 17,000 emergency calls, including 428 mutual aid calls from surrounding fire agencies. This division has 156 employees. Within our Emergency Operations Division, we have a special operations teams. In addition to their normal emergency calls, these firefighters assigned to the special teams also respond to hazardous materials incidents, surface water rescue, technical rescue, SWAT medic missions, and aircraft emergencies. These high-risk, low-frequency rescue missions require special training and equipment to safely address the unique and often challenging circumstances faced by these emergency responders. Our training division provides ongoing proficiency training in multiple areas, including but not limited to fire tactics, emergency medical skills, and personnel management. The training division oversees the administration of our diversity recruitment committee, entrance level testing, and our promotional exam process. Our Fire and Life Safety Division is responsible for the city's fire prevention and emergency preparedness programs. This division has 6 full-time employees. Fire Prevention Division also reviews all commercial and multifamily residential plans. Let's go back one. And they also review specialty systems for fire and life safety compliance. They provide technical advice during pre-application conferences for larger construction projects. This division also provides determination of fire cause and origin on all fire investigations for the emergency operation divisions. They also oversee our citywide emergency preparedness program and provide planning and city staff training for recovery from large-scale emergencies. And they also coordinate with regional agencies in emergency preparedness. This division also trains our emergency citizens in emergency preparedness through our Community Emergency Response, or CERT program. One of our performance indicators for the fire department is the council-mandated response time goal, which is 5.5-minute response time measured from the receipt of the time you call until we arrive on scene, 85% of the time on priority emergencies. This chart shows you a progression from 2002 until current. From our low of 57% in 2004, we now meet this response objective 73% of the time in 2003. The fire department has had many successes last year, and I would like to highlight 4 of these major accomplishments for you now. I'll start with an update on our seismic improvements for Station 1. These seismic and retrofit improvements and facility upgrades to Station 1 have been completed. This project was funded through the 2006 bond issue and through federal grant funding. Overall, the fire bond project is ahead of schedule and continues to be under budget. At this time next year, I'll provide you with a final closeout report for the bond issue projects and present options to Council for their consideration on expenditures of remaining bond funds to purchase land for future fire station locations. Speaking of grant funding, our fire department has been very aggressive and successful in applying for and receiving grants. Total grants in process during 2010 were $1,814,000. An example of one of these grants was the Assistant to Firefighters Grant for $450,000, which was used to purchase new portable radios, which would be compliant with our new standards. Last fall and early this spring, the Training Division delivered rapid intervention team rescue training and large area search training to all Salem Fire Department crews at the State Hospital facility. The use of the State Hospital buildings that were scheduled for demolition provided an excellent venue for this valuable training. Fortunately, we were able to extend this training opportunity to our regional partners in surrounding fire departments. Finally, we were successfully able to negotiate a 5-year renewal contract with our partner and ambulance provider, Rural Metro. This was a council goal from last year, and I will provide more information regarding the details of this contract during my EMS budget presentation in May. There are 3 significant changes that will take place next year. The first being a reorganization that will more evenly distribute span of control, more closely align responsibility, and increase the efficiency throughout our organization. The Training and Emergency Medical Services Division, which was previously under the direction of the Deputy Chief of Operations, has now been reassigned to a new Deputy Chief of Training and EMS. This new position is a reclassification of the existing Division Chief of Training and will be funded 50% from the General Fund and 50% from the EMS Fund. The second change is an expansion of our emergency preparedness program. While we've always had plans to be prepared for emergencies, these can certainly be improved upon. After witnessing the tragedies in Japan earlier this year, it's time for us to be more proactive in our approach to planning in order to better be prepared for the aftermath of such a tragedy that may happen here in Oregon. The final major change is an elimination of 1 Deputy Fire Marshal position. The remaining 4 Deputy Fire Marshals will absorb the additional workload related to life safety plan and review new construction site inspections. The Deputy Fire Marshal's geographical area of responsibilities have been reassigned and decentralized to increase efficiencies. One of the areas where we achieved this was the Fire and Life Safety Division has worked collaboratively with Community Development and Building and Safety to achieve efficiencies in inspecting apartments by allowing the compliance service officers to issue fire safety violations on a limited basis. In closing, I'm excited to serve as your fire chief and look forward to the challenges and opportunities before us. It's a pleasure to serve with the men and women of the Salem Fire Department, and I have every confidence that we will continue to deliver the high level of service our community deserves. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
And next we have Vicki Woods, who's our Community Development Director.
Welcome, Director Woods.
Thank you, Chair Strozek. I'm pleased to be here this evening to talk about the Community Development Department. We are a much smaller slice of the pie, as you can see when you look at the total pie. The Community Development Department has almost a $4 million budget in the general fund, and we are composed of 3 separate divisions: the Planning Division, the Neighborhood Enhancement Division, and the Building and Safety Division. Building and Safety operates in a restricted fund and is not the subject of our discussion tonight, so I'll be focusing on the Planning Division and the Neighborhood Enhancement Division. The 2 divisions are just about equally divided in the amount of resources that are allocated to them as far as dollars are concerned. In the Planning Division, the department as a whole is about safety and about livability. And particularly the Planning Division and Neighborhood Enhancement Division is about livability. These are the people who are in neighborhood enhancement touching the neighborhoods. They're out doing code enforcement because there's a compliance services division. They're inspecting apartments to make sure they're safe in the multi-family section of that division. There's a neighborhood services division that supports all the neighborhood associations in the city, and a youth development component to that. Of those separate activities in the Neighborhood Enhancement Division, about almost 60% of the resources are allocated to compliance services, and the next largest allocation of resources goes to the neighborhood association component and the neighborhood partnership program combined. In the Planning Division, they do both current and long-range planning. The majority of the effort is allocated to current planning. Current planning is about development review, land use applications that come in, building permits that come in, making sure that they comply with the rules and regulations that we have developed in this community, making sure that historic structures are maintained the way that we ask them to be maintained, and assuring that people are complying with the rules and regulations that have been developed. And a lot of those rules and regulations are developed through the long-range planning division, whose job it is to look further into the future. So unlike the neighborhood enhancement division, where you see the touch of that every day. The long-range planning section looks further out and tries to, it takes a long time to change a community through land use laws and regulations, but they try to look ahead and see what will make our community better as a result of the way that the rules and regulations and policies are written and developed. For the first time this year in the Planning Division, we are allocating an increased portion to long-range planning than we have in the past, so that current planning is taking about 60% and a little more than 60%, and long-range planning will be taking almost 40%. They coordinate regionally. We've been working on the economic opportunities analysis. The city councilors have been participating in that. They're working, which is an analysis of how much land do we need, how much employment land do we need for the future to accommodate the growth that we expect. We'll also be looking at the residential land supply in the same way. Those are all regional efforts that we coordinate together with our partner jurisdictions that are involved. And the next slide talks about the accomplishments of this year. I want to talk about two things specifically here. One of them is the Historic Preservation Plan and new regulations. We did a wholesale rewrite of our historic regulations this year, and we did, I think, what is a great job. We developed a plan, worked with the community, we corrected some of the problems and complications and challenges that were in the code as it was. It was adopted with unanimous support from the community, and it's been a very good tool for us to use in preserving some of our historic structures, which is a very important component of our community. The other thing we've been working on is a neighborhood center mixed-use project. That's a project we've been working on for quite some time. And I'm pleased to say that the Planning Commission just last night took a look at the final version of it after they had completed it, and we took it back to rewrite it and get it into the right format. And I think it's going to move forward quickly here. We anticipate that it will be done by the end of the year. The Neighborhood Center Mixed Use District is a new zoning district that would be available in the city that would allow for some mixed use and set up some design standards and guidelines to go along with that. We've done a couple of other things too. I wanted to just kind of put the big ones up there, but and I just could not let this go by, that we have had, I think, 16 chicken permits issued too this year. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about next year now. Our big effort, the biggest thing that we've been doing for the past several years is to try to rewrite our regulations and codes. Remember, I talked about how the current planning, their job is to enforce the codes and regulations. Well, that hasn't been the easiest thing in the world for the past 25 years because they've been added onto and changed and made more complicated and conflicting with other ones, to the point where it's very difficult to do a good job of applying those codes and regulations. So we've been in a 3-year effort to fix them. This is the final stage of it. We're stepping through them chapter by chapter, and by the end of this year, this fiscal year, before the end of this next fiscal year, we will have a new code adopted that will be simpler and easier to understand and clearer. So we look for that as a highlight for next year. We also have several long-range projects that we're looking at, and I'm pleased to say that for the first time since I've been here, which is 15 years, we've actually, well, that's not true. In 10 years, we've actually allocated some money to do some neighborhood planning. The Morningside Neighborhood Association has for years been asking us to take a look at that neighborhood plan, help get it updated and incorporated. We have many neighborhood plans in this community that have not been updated in tens of years, and we have allocated some money this year for the first time to do that since we did the West Salem neighborhood plan 10 years ago. So we see this as a step in the right direction toward neighborhood planning. We also are going to be doing some work in the North Broadway area, talking about parking and how it works and transportation in that area. We also have budgeted some money for the analysis of annexation, what it costs. When growth occurs, when we bring land into the city, how much does it cost? How much revenue do we get from that? Is it advantageous to do that? We put some money in the budget to update and do a new study of an earlier study that was done related to that topic. And then finally, coming up this year is with the new census out, we will be having to redistrict the council districts. That's a responsibility that lies in the Community Development Department, and that'll be coming up here shortly. So councilors, be ready, because probably some of those boundary lines are going to be moving. I think probably, though, the biggest thing that's happening in the next year, and the way that we've managed to save some money, keep our budget stable, even though we've got rising labor costs and benefit costs, the way we've managed to not increase the cost is that we have actually decided to rely on existing staff rather than to farm out much of our long-range planning effort. So we've reduced our consulting dollars by several $100,000 this year, and we are relying on our existing staff. So we are able to keep jobs, even though development is down. We can shift those people from doing current planning into doing long-range planning. We can maintain the jobs and get the work done and keep that in-house. And that's been the biggest thing we've done in order to try to keep our budget managed. So when we took a look at what we were doing, we basically are allocating the same amount of money in the neighborhood enhancement division for neighborhoods and code enforcement and those kinds of activities, youth development. That's all the same. But we've taken a reduction in the planning division. That's where most of that reduction has occurred, by shifting to in-house. And that's been our method of being able to get through this year and these times and become more efficient over time. We've done several other things. I want to tout the fact that we're always looking at ways to save money. And one of those things was we had a creative planner who took a look at how can we notify people who own historic properties. It was very important for us to do that. How can we get notice to them so they don't buy a property and find out later that it's got some restrictions on it. And we found a way to do that working with our finance department that was much cheaper than what we had anticipated. We were anticipating large costs to do that. It's working effectively, and that's because they've become creative in how they look at it. Another thing we did was to try to find how we can get Wi-Fi into our conference room. We're constantly looking at plans and things up on the wall, and they found a quick and easy way to do that as well. And the chief talked a little bit about how we try to work together as departments, and how the compliance service officers who are going into all these apartments and inspecting them, how they can do some work for them. And we do that interdepartmentally too, so we try to cross-train our individuals. Finally, I want to talk about the Sustainable Cities Initiative. We've all been asked to talk to you about the projects that affect our departments, and there are two that I'm going to talk about tonight. One of them is the project south of Mission. So that was a project from the Sustainable Cities Initiative that was intended to address the area south of Mission and the transition between the commercial the downtown, the commercial strip basically, and then the residential areas around there. And the students came up with some urban design concepts. They looked at what the constraints were, and they came up with a mission for Mission Street, of trying to create a vibrant neighborhood which is distinct, connected, walkable, mixed, and green. And we have actually, and they managed to stir up, I think, quite a bit of excitement and enthusiasm amongst the neighborhood association and the people who live there. Well, we want to see that enthusiasm and excitement continue, so we've budgeted about $80,000 in this next year's budget to try to implement that, to come up with, to work with the people who are affected by it, come up with those ideas in that study that will work, and then actually adopt some implementing regulations. So we've put that into our budget. The Neighborhood Association Civic Engagement, we haven't actually budgeted money for, but we spent this year working on that. And in fact, that was the students who took a look at how the neighborhood associations work and how they engage people. And they had some advice for the neighborhood associations, which they delivered to them. And the advice was, first, they should restructure the associations, and they should use electronic media more effectively. The strategy was to rebrand those associations, to make them be something that people see as being engaging, involving, and participatory. So those kinds of words. And also to attract and engage people, they laid out a whole array of digital tools and talked to the neighborhood associations about how many people are involved in the electronic media. There's a lot of talk. There was some enthusiasm, some resistance, some maybe that won't work for us. But there was then a follow-up meeting, and some specific ideas were laid out, and they are beginning to implement them. So we've seen some positive feedback from the Neighborhood Association Civic Engagement Project. And that concludes what I'm going to say to you this evening.
Thank you.
And next, Sean O'Day, the Deputy City Manager, will present the City Manager's budget.
Madam Chair, Mayor, members of Council, and the Budget Committee, I'm Sean O'Day. I'm the Deputy City Manager. It's truly my pleasure to stand with the other department directors today to present to you the general fund budget. In particular, I'll be presenting the City Manager's Office portion of the budget. Before I begin, however, I want to acknowledge the hard work that went into preparing this part of the budget by Casey Duncan in our central office, Kelly Jacobs in the library, and Cynthia Klein in Center 50 Plus. Without them, this presentation or would this budget go so smoothly. As shown on this slide, the current organizational structure of the City Manager's Office really is divided into 3 sections. We have the central office, which provides management and budget services for the city, Center 50 Plus, and the library. And I'm going to spend a few moments here talking you through what each of these do. With 10 full-time employees in the City Management and Budget Division, this division serves a number of important functions for the city, including managing and leading staff towards the accomplishment of city goals, City Council goals, and Urban Renewal Board goals, preparing, forecasting, and monitoring the city budgets, responding to and increasing awareness of human rights and relations concerns, administering agreements with our franchised cable, utility, and garbage providers. And in addition, this division provides leadership and direction in the day-to-day operations of the city, ensures regulatory compliance, provides strategic management, and is often involved in our economic development activities. We coordinate public information and our legislative program at both the state legislature and federal legislature, and we provide administrative support to the council, the Urban Renewal Agency Board, its various subcommittees, as well as other city advisory boards and committees. Turning now to Center 50 Plus, under the leadership of Marilyn Daly, the mission of the center is to provide life-enriching opportunities for adults age 50 and over through activities, services, and involvement in the community. While that mission statement has not changed significantly over the last 30 years, the types of programs and services that we provide at the center have. With its doors open more than 300 days per year and an average of 3,500 hours per year, Center 50 Plus has been able to respond to these changing service demands. We see an average of 750 patrons each day that participate in programs and services providing socialization, lifelong learning, personal enrichment, nutrition, health and fitness, respite, caregiver services, and opportunities for civic engagement and volunteerism. Indeed, volunteers are the backbone of this operation. Over 600 volunteers last year contributed more than 76,000 hours of community service and service to the center. It's equivalent to about 30 full-time equivalent employees, and using a 2009 national volunteer value of $20.25 per hour, that equates to a value of about $1.5 million to the city and to the center in particular. Looking at the library, the Salem Public Library began serving local residents in 1904 with just a handful of books and periodicals. Today, under the leadership of B.J. Toey, the library's collection encompasses more than 500,000 items. Of course, it includes books and periodicals, but it also includes DVDs, CDs, audiobooks, databases, book discussion kits, subject totes and puppets for children, classroom kits for preschoolers and daycares, e-books, e-readers, and MP3 players. In 2010, the library circulated more than 1.3 million items. That's an increase of about 2.5% from last year, and early data in this calendar year suggests that we're going to see an increase in circulation of over 12%. Our services provided at the library are as diverse as our collection. Of course, when thinking about library services, most people think of adult reference services and the databases that we have, and on the reader advisories that we provide in making recommendations to folks on what their interests might be and what might be in the collection. But we also provide a whole host of other services, recognizing the library as a cultural facility. We have art exhibits. We have an extensive historic photo collection. We have public use computers and early literacy training for parents and daycare providers. These are services that really expand and broaden the definition of what a public library is today. With funding from the Assistance League, we're able to deliver books to over 100 homebound residents. And every first grade classroom in the school district gets a visit by our bookmobile because of assistance that the Assistance League provides us. We offer free wireless access and free computer classes for members of the public, as well as city employees. And with the advent and the popularity of e-books and audiobooks, we have a technological learning center that invites residents to come in and get a hands-on experience with a variety of e-readers before making their own selection. By way of programs, most of the special programming at the library is made possible through the generosity of the Salem Public Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library. In 2010, their financial support equaled over $80,000, and this helped us produce more than 1,200 programs, of which nearly 100,000 people were able to attend. That average is about, that number of 100,000 attendees is about a 55% increase over last year. Examples of the types of programming that I'm referring to would include the Summer Reading Program, the Children's Discovery Room, our Modern Voices Author Series, and the World of Music Series. And very much like Center 50 Plus, the library is dependent upon its volunteers. In 2010, 355 volunteers devoted more than 25,000 hours to the Salem Public Library.
That is amazing.
Turning now to our major accomplishments, I first want to talk about the new teen library. With the aid of our Facilities Division and gifts from the community as administered by the Salem Public Library Advisory Board, gifts from the Salem Public Library Foundation, and Friends of the Salem Public Library, we invested more than $250,000 in a new space, dedicated space for teens in our communities. Space that is intended to meet, and by all accounts thus far has indeed met, their educational and informational needs. Due to an Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant from the United States Department of Energy, we were able to fund a library lighting project. We were able to re-lamp fixtures, some of which were over 40 years old, increasing the energy efficiency of the building and really adding a great deal to its brightness. As you can see, this young gentleman here on this slide had to wear sunglasses on his first day visiting the children's room following the lighting upgrade. Thankfully, this grant allowed us to free up other resources that we were able to put towards asbestos abatement on the first floor of the library, which paved the way for the teen library, and also take care of other areas on that first floor that had been troubled by asbestos in the past. Looking at major accomplishments of Center 50 Plus, having updated its comprehensive strategic operation plan this year, the center is now turning to developing a business plan that's going to address the business methods to achieve its mission. The plan really is focused on maximizing the facility usage. It's going to take a look at fee structure and cost recovery. Turning now to the fiscal year 11-12 budget, our highlights and significant changes start with the Administration Division. We've restructured the functions within our office to realize some cost savings within the budget. We've reduced our seasonal staffing by about $40,000 in the area of legislative and public information, and we'll be reassigning those duties to a position that had been previously titled Intergovernmental Relations Coordinator, but shows in your budget books as a management analyst too. With respect to Center 50 Plus, I'm pleased to say last year I reported that the center's operations were supported roughly 50% by outside funding. I'm pleased to say that this year and what we expect next year is to see outside funding in the area of about 60%. The budget that you have reflects that, as well as the current year, essentially the same level of service. With regard to the public library, your budget shows a new position titled Adult Services Manager. Historically, the Salem Library Foundation had funded a community relations coordinator at the library. That was an arrangement that was reached about 10 years ago with the intent that eventually that position would come under the funding of the city. 2 years ago, the city started to pick up half of that position, and this year due to economic circumstances and largely recognizing the original intent of that position, the foundation has discontinued its financial support of the community relations position. What we have done in the library is pick up that position 100% and are retitling it as an adult services manager, taking the duties of the community relations coordinator and spreading it among all of our managers in the library. To be able to achieve this with essentially a zero cost implication, we have reduced our materials budget to make up those differences. The net effect of all of these changes is that within the city manager's division is a budget that is approximately $30,000 less than this current fiscal year budget. Already, Vicki Harden-Woods talked to you a little bit about the Civic Engagement Sustainable Cities Initiative. I want to conclude my presentation by explaining two other aspects of this particular project, which encompass 3 terms, 5 different courses, and 2 independent study students. Vicki spoke to you about the neighborhood component of it. This project also had a component where it looked at how we might reach the Latino population within our community a little bit more effectively, as well as how internally we might reorganize or provide our staff better tools to be able to communicate effectively and engage the public in our projects, programs, and services. The outcome of this was a solid foundation for a strategic communications plan that we intend to undertake next year with existing resources, and a toolkit for our city program managers that we'll be rolling out at the beginning of next fiscal year and training those program managers, again, within existing resources. So you will not find separate line items for this. These are activities that we'll essentially incorporate within our daily operations. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I believe at this point we're going to take a break in the general fund presentation to answer any questions you might have about the presentations you've heard.
Thank you, Mr. O'Day. So we are ready for public testimony, and just a reminder of the rules. It's 3 minutes, and the first one up is Tom Beasley, and after that is Nancy McDaniel. And a yellow light will come on after 2 minutes, and the red light will come on after 3 minutes, and that's the sign that your time is up. So, Mr. Beasley?
Madam Chairman, Budget Committee members, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tom Beasley, and I live in Ward 3 in Salem. The graphs that have been secretly placed before you without my name on them are mine. They were given to Mrs. Neville because the city recorder does not log things in for budget processes. They go to Mrs. Neville's office. So I wouldn't hold her in fault. I could have put my name on them, and if I have occasion to do so, I will in the future.
Thank you.
The plots before you are one shareholder's way of looking how the corporation spends his money. They are in part good, solid data from CAPA reports. The distal ends of the graphs are in fact fantasy. They are from budget allocation, not from budget obligations, and those are entirely different. Wish list to the far end, what you've spent on the bottom end. I chose this particular meeting because what is going on with the fire and police funds is representative of the broader general fund as an entity. If you look at the police department plots, you can see that one answer to Mr. Mankey's opening statements is how do we bend curves? You'll see a curve that is constantly bending up. On the second parts of the graphic shows you how they bend up with unit costs for people and for what the total FTE changes bring about in the way of cost increases as well. The back last graphs of both the police and fire plots are in fact the fantasy that you must avoid at all costs. Those are fantasies because they largely represent budget allocations. What they show you is you're transforming the cost of this corporation from simple exponential growth into what possibly could be polynomial growth, where things grow as the square of time. That's fantasy so far. You need to avoid it until you come to grips with the rising costs of personal service in this group. You're on a collision course with a flattening revenue curve and a rising personal services cost. You can do what you wish with these graphs. You can put them in the dustbin. You can have them verified. I would argue that you ask, if interested, that your staff prepare graphics for you that ask the same questions. What fraction of our total revenues are we spending on personal services? What fraction of our revenues are we spending on personal services? And if it turns out to be correct, 8 or more of every $10 you will take in this corporation's budget will go to sponsor people. And I'll end my remarks there. Take any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Beasley? All right. Nancy McDaniel, followed by, I hope I'm reading this correctly, Leslie Polson.
Hello, my name is Nancy McDaniel. Can you hear me okay?
I think you need to adjust the mic a little bit, just the tip, but usually
Is this better?
I think so.
Okay. My name is Nancy McDaniel. I'm a board member of the Northeast Neighborhood Association.
I'm sorry, I think we need to adjust that a little bit more. If you could put just the tip, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm a board member of Northeast Neighborhood Association, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the neighborhood planning process. Vicki Harden-Wood already talked a little bit about this, talking about the Morningside Neighborhood Association plan. We, Northeast Neighbors got involved this year and decided we wanted to come up with a neighborhood plan. And we were kind of excited about this. We looked at the code, and it says, the neighborhood plan shall be the basis for any neighborhood association's recommendations to any city board, commission, or agency. The city board, commission, or agency shall consider the neighborhood plan in making any decision or recommendation which would affect the designated neighborhood. So we were really excited. We thought this is a chance to give us a voice in shaping how our community grows. So then we met with the community development planners, and they were very generous with their time and explained. We had a list of questions, a whole page of questions for them. They gave us a lot of information, but in the end they told us that they were just getting around to reviewing the Morningside Neighborhood Association plan after, I think, that had been completed in 2004. I know there are other neighborhood association plans that are 25 years old, and we don't even have one. We're starting from scratch. We don't have something to update. And I think we're reasonably intelligent people, but we're not planners, and without the assistance from the planning division, we're not going to be able. Well, we're going to muddle through this probably, but then if we muddle through it, we've got the uncertainty about how long will it take for our plan to get reviewed by the city. So I would just like to make a plea. I don't have a specific recommendation or anything, but I would like to ask that as you go through the budget process, that you do consider the responsibility that we in the neighborhood associations feel in being a voice for citizens in local planning and decision making, and the resources that we need to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for your work with the Neighborhood Association. If it's any comfort, in Highland, our neighborhood plan is 1984, okay. Right up to date. And I think Member Nanke had a question or comment.
Yes, thanks for coming down. Morningside's plan is their original plan. I was chair back in the late 90s. We had updated it mid-90s. It was updated again in 04. The first update in the 90s, the city didn't accept. We've been trying to get them to work on the later one again still. But in that time, West Salem had a lot of money allocated to a neighborhood plan, and we realized that that is not sustainable as a number of about $1 million to do 19 neighborhood associations. $19 million would be awful. So what we're looking at with the Morningside plan is to try to find a streamlined way to essentially make a model for the balance of the neighborhood associations that don't have one, and that can be done with some kind of fiscal efficacy.
So when could we be looking for that model?
Well, I think we're working on trying to get Morningsides done within a year's time, as far as getting close to where we can see what that is. And as we kind of lock into that, I would hope that others would at least start into that process, getting some of their own policy pieces together. The map will have to essentially come out of Community Development Department, but the other policy pieces you could start working on.
Now?
I don't know if I'd start them now. You could, just to have your template out there. It's always easier to attack something that's already written and modify it than to just kind of start up from scratch. But you may want to kind of get staff's input on where they think Morningsides is right off, and then you just get an electronic copy of theirs and start changing words.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Let's see. Next is Leslie Polson, and after that is Elaine Day.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am also working with Nancy McDaniel on the neighborhood plan, and we were told that they have 70 hours staff review at the minimum. Our concern is that we like our neighborhoods, and we're seeing a lot of changes, so we realize the value of having a neighborhood plan so that we can basically not have a lot of surprises and basically keep the cohesive of the reason why we live in the neighborhood and not be stuck with a nightmare. So that's our vision of the neighborhood plan, because without a neighborhood plan, nightmares consist of neighbors that, you know, have all kinds of issues and they impact us, and then we're stuck with a lifestyle that we really don't appreciate. So we're trying to make sure that our neighborhood plan is viewed comprehensively in the whole planning process, because how we feel about our neighborhoods contributes to what makes Salem very cool and nice. You know, when you come through and decide to widen the street, take out the trees, you know, put in houses that are incompatible with the houses that we live in, and we live in Nen because it's got some very cool amenities, but for us to have a design changes brought into the neighborhood will totally impact the look of our neighborhood. So we really see that we really need to start having some kind of planning so that we don't have our streets turned into freeways and other things that we didn't plan when we bought the home. So
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your work with Nen. Let's see. Whoops, wrong one. After Elaine Day will be Vlasta Havel.
Good evening, Chair Strozik and members of the Budget Committee. I'm Elaine Day, and I'm a member of the Salem Public Library Advisory Committee. I'd like to express to you my appreciation for your support, for your budgetary support for the library. And the library is a very important part of the community, and not only during poor economic times, but every day, every week, and has been for the last 107 years. Access is probably the foundation for not only our library, but all libraries, and is part of our mission statement. It says our library serves the community by promoting and providing opportunities for full information and access of ideas, to love of reading, and the joys of learning. We meet our mission statement through our commitment to service. We share with the community our sense of service Every time we have a group of toddlers that goes into our activity room for story time, or a parent and teen who come in and do research for homework, a grandmother who gets one-on-one computer training on how to use email, or even when the Laux Auditorium is open for World of Music concert. The library does not belong or is not owned by the staff. They are strictly caretakers and custodians of the library. It doesn't belong to the public officials who granted the budget. It belongs to all the citizens of the city of Salem. I am just now completing my second four-year term on the board. I would never have spent this amount of time on something that I did not feel such a commitment to. The library is an amazing place. For those of you who have not been to the library in a number of years, you may be very surprised to come visit. It's bright, it's cheery, it's got artwork, it's got all kinds of programs going on, and is pretty amazing to me, the activity, the buzz of activity that goes on there, and the volume of people going in and out. So I invite all of you to come visit the library and be surprised with what you have right here in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for your service. Were there any, just a second, were there any questions for Elaine? All right.
I'm Lasta Haber, and I came to give you some more information about what's going on. I know that some of you do come to the library, and I think that you will be a little smarter about it. Those who don't come, they'll just be sorry, because they are missing all of the things. We have programs from babies to old people, and everybody enjoys certain things, so we have them at certain times of the month or week. We have the big ones, like that Word of Music, which was here this month. It was an ensemble drumming and dancing from Guinea in West Africa. We have the modern voices of authors from here, Oregon, and all over. The last one this month was from Chicago. Then we have things that are done for all people who are interested in it. For instance, they have books for lunch and books for dessert. Depending on when they have they have the time to come, around noon or at night. And these are about one book. A group gets together about one book. There is somebody from the library who leads the discussion, and everybody can enjoy those books much more afterwards. And then we have all kinds of things that come in between. For instance, some groups. The former Governor Straub, his environmental learning center. They will come and have sections, have talks here, Audible Society, and so on. Then we have the children's, there is a discovery room where the small kids, preschoolers, can be down at the farm this month through the next month. And things like that, there are too many to tell you. But, you know, if you don't know about it, you can go there. This is a publication that comes every month. If you are a friend of the library, you get it by mail 3 days before. Otherwise, it's on the first of the month. It's in the library, whether you come or go. You know, that counter like that. So on that counter will be a small box that holds these. pick it up, and then go through it and find everything that's done in that bunch, what would interest you. Mark it, and then take your calendar and jot them down. Because if you forget, oh, it was yesterday. Okay.
Thank you so
this
much.
might help you a lot. Now, in my quarter century of volunteering, I've seen very many changes, from shh to all these books and everything we have. And if I live some more, I'm sure I'm just will be overwhelmed. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Vlasta. Are there any questions? All right. Whoops. Okay, just to alert folks that I have two more people signed up, Jacqueline Schendel, I think, and Alan Scott. But first, do we have questions of Vlasta? We have, who is first?
Okay.
I think Member Clausen.
Member Clausen?
So mine's just a comment, and I have to say thanks to all the library staff. I have a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old at home, and they love going to the library. The story times are so much fun with the kids, so anybody with young kids should definitely look into that. And got my library book in my car and probably save $50 to $100 a year and not having to buy books. So it's a great service.
Member Nanke, did you have a comment? You were just helping your, yeah.
And then the mayor.
Thank you. I would like to thank both of the ladies for coming down tonight and for testimony and for being so well prepared for your testimony. You certainly added to our enlightenment about the library, and appreciate so much your service, not just to the library. Your service is really to the community, and thank you so much. I think that word public is a hugely important word in our Salem Public Library, and we appreciate what you've done to enhance the public's enjoyment of the library. Thank you.
I'd like to second and third those comments, and most folks know that I volunteer at the library. It's just a wonderful group of staff and volunteers, and an example of what great people they are is they share a refrigerator freezer with the cafe, and the cafe management has mentioned that they never have any of their goodies disappear out of their refrigerator. Yes, Member Dickey?
Yeah, I want to echo the sentiment too for all of the volunteers, for the ladies who spoke and the other volunteers and our library staff. Our library has done an excellent job of reaching all of our age groups, as was mentioned, not only with books, but our technology has changed dramatically in the last 5 years or so, and our library has done an excellent job of keeping up with that and just finding a place. So there's something for everybody there, true. And unlike Councilor Clausen, I would save $50 a year, except for I tend to rack up the overdue fees, so it kind of cancels it out.
Bring in the cans of food.
I've seen many cans and other food containers going through in the last week. All right, Jacqueline, thank you for waiting for us.
Okay, I'm Jacqueline Schendel, and I am the Vice President of the Friends of the Salem Public Library. Here in Salem, we're really lucky in that we have 3 boards that help out the library and help out the Salem community, because I think with our money, we are able to make up a lot of the shortcomings that, unfortunately, like in times like right now, that council cannot be the hero that I know that most of you would really love to be. So I am here to say something that maybe hasn't been said enough, and it's just simply thank you. And it's thank you for the funds that you have set aside for us. We are really, really appreciative. However, the budget was cut, and most of the money came from the new materials. And this is something that the Friends of the Salem Library is quite involved with. We instituted what we call the Grab and Go collection, and that's where on the pillars you can find the current hot read and just rush in, rush out with the #1 bestseller. So that's a very good thing. So what you have done with your cutting is made our work a little bit harder. We're going to have to work harder to raise more money, and fortunately, with this last book sale that we had, we were up 10%. So that's encouraging. I would also say that if you've been to the library lately, you will have noticed that, first of all, the parking lot seems to be packed, which is very good for the city because the money from the parking meters does not go to the library, it goes into the general fund, and so that's helping things out. So the healthier the library is, the healthier the community is too, because with the computers that are involved, a lot of people are looking for work that way. There's wonderful family entertainment, and so we're just thankful that what cuts there were not greater. And I would also like to take this time to express a desire that when your invitation comes to the volunteer recognition event, which you should be receiving very shortly in the mail, that you will take the time to put the date on the calendar and to actually come on the 13th of May in the evening to the library. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you so much for your service and your support for the library. Alan Scott. And Mr. Scott is the last person who signed up to speak, but not the least.
Thank you, Chair Strozet. Chair Strozet, Mayor, and committee members, my name is Alan Scott. Some of you know me as the chair of NEN, but tonight I'm here just kind of on my own. Not that we haven't talked about these issues at NEN, but that it's not a board issue tonight. And last time I spoke, that red light came on, so I have a solution. Sorry, I just...
See that light.
Anyway, tonight I'm here asking the committee to consider adding $987 to the graffiti abatement department for the purchase of generator and spray painting equipment. I spend way too much time down in Los Angeles, and I've seen the effects of graffiti not being removed. It's like ivy. It just, it grows so much down there that people just don't care anymore. And I do not want that to happen to Salem. So I know that in the past they used rollers, and those don't work real well on uneven surfaces, and I really would like you to consider that. I also have comments about the Public Works budget. Should I wait until they're done with their presentation? Or
that was last week, wasn't it?
They actually presented last week, but you may want to...
You can use your time now to comment on
that. Then I'll have to speak real quickly. My second request is a slightly larger amount of $200,000 for additional railroad crossing safety updates. Back in May of 2010, the City Council set aside $1.2 million to improve 10 of the 16 crossings here in Salem, and I'm asking that that amount be updated to add additional crossings to the safety improvement program, not just for safety, but also the desire to create a quiet zone through the residential areas of Salem, which is a livability issue in our case, in NEN's case. So. I also want to thank Compliance Services. They help us out a lot. I don't have any recommendations for them, but they can't have too many staff, I'll tell you that much.
We could give them extra candy tonight.
That's it.
Or do you have anything more? The light hasn't come on.
No, gee. I'll tell you a little bit about my trip to Los Angeles. I went down to see my mother-in-law, who was just out of the hospital, and it was 98 degrees this last Friday.
Oh.
So, I knew it would come on when it got boring, so I'll stop with that. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Alan. I think we have a couple of questions or comments, and I would just like to say what a pleasure it's been working with you as a fellow North Salem chair on issues like quiet zones for trains and helicopters from fairgrounds and that sort of thing.
We just received our request from the State Fair for a variance.
So did our
approval,
neighborhood.
so good.
Yes. And
We'll have to talk.
Member Dickey?
Thanks for coming down, Alan, and yeah, thank you for your help in volunteering in the neighborhood. That's always appreciated. I just am curious about the graffiti abatement. You said a generator spray paint machine. Is this something? Have you discussed this with our graffiti staff? And can you kind of just tell a little bit how that came about and where you get that $987 figure from?
Well, I actually had written down 1,000, but I thought 987 sounded so much better that I was willing to put in my own $13 to make it up. But I've talked a lot with Kim. I call in every time I see some graffiti. I always pull over to the side of the road and call. But she and I have been talking this past year about some portable method that didn't require electricity, and I've contacted a number of sprayers, corporations, Hudson's for one, there was another one, D'Angelo, looking to see if they didn't make a pump sprayer that we could modify for use of latex, and we're not getting anywhere with that, so I thought I might be able to help them out if we could get some sort of electrical system, whether it be a regular airless or some other compressed air spray or something like that. So, again, it's just my fear every time I go to Los Angeles, what I see down there, and it frightens me.
So, is this something you would envision being used citywide?
Yes,
So,
yes,
great.
not just for Nen.
Awesome.
We could try it in Nen for a while, but.
Do we have any other questions? All right, that's the last person. Thank you very much, Alan. Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry.
Comment, not a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's not for you.
Oh.
Sorry. In the discussion of the library, pretty much everything got mentioned. I would like to mention one thing that didn't, and that is how much of a valuable resource the West Salem branch of the library is to the community. The staff are enormously supportive. The conference rooms are well used. The facility is valued. It has a long, time-honored history dating back to the original merger of West Salem with Salem. And we certainly do, we value it. It's just a tremendously good program.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who wanted to comment on the items on the agenda tonight, on the budget items, who did not sign up?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you need to come to the podium for the record. And could you state your name
My name's Ted Campbell, and
and your address or your ward?
Pardon? Oh, Dan's my ward man. Ward 8. I was just on the spray painting. Why would we need a generator? Usually they use compressed air on a spray gun instead of a generator. And you can buy a gas compressor pretty cheap and a spray outfit fairly inexpensively. So that seemed like a high figure to me. You can go out to Harbor Freight and walk out $300 with enough to do all that.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to move to questions for staff. Or did we have more staff presentations?
We have the internal services, but I don't know if Budget Committee members have anything else you want to say about the departments you've already heard from.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Member Bennett?
Yeah, I had just a couple of questions for community development. One of the, Vicki, one of the issues that comes up pretty regular, has at least for the past number of years, is long-range planning. You mentioned it tonight. You are going to be able to re-engage in long-range planning. Is that
We are engaging more actively in long-range planning this coming year than we have in the past. And that's because we've diverted staff resources. Development is down, and we've diverted those resources to working on long-range planning. And so I listed several studies that we'll be performing over the course of the next year. And there are a couple more things that are going on as well, smaller activities. And neighborhood planning in particular is one that we have picked up for this next year. We are hoping that the Morningside neighborhood plan will be a model that can be used by many neighborhoods, although I probably would not advise them to just start and change some of the names. But it's affirming to hear people want to engage in these neighborhood plans. They're very important, but it's also important that they connect to the rest of the community, because it's important what is unique and distinctive about each neighborhood is important, but it's also important that as a community we have all the things we need when it all adds up together. And that's why it takes, plus Oregon land use law is very complicated, and that's why it takes our help, I think, and why neighborhoods get really frustrated when they try to do it themselves.
Well, I want to call out, again, call to your attention. You heard from Northeast Neighbors. That's one of my neighborhood groups, and in fact, it appeared that everyone on the board was here tonight to speak on these issues, and I thought it was great. I really was pleased, and I had heard last night about the neighborhood plan problem there. This is a highly motivated neighborhood that's ready to go, and it's one that is being affected by the pressure of being one of the inner neighborhoods just off of 12th Street.
Yes.
And Grant is another one that really need some planning. So I hope...
Probably a good effort for us to do this next year as we work with Morningside to develop a good model is then to develop a system of identifying where are the next best steps to take, and maybe some kind of application or evaluation that says, this neighborhood has an interested and dedicated group of people who want to work on it, and they have these problems facing them, and see if we can find a way to systematically get these neighborhood plans up to date and create a whole city that has neighborhood plans.
Well, one thought, and I thought I heard Nancy sort of saying it, is to the extent possible with your additional long-range planning staff, if there is any way to provide guidance to a neighborhood that is ready to go in terms of data collection or other kinds of preliminary activities that would then lend itself to the plan development, that are really the basis for the discussion. I think even just offering them, not a template, but here's what we need to know kind of stuff, that would really help to get people going and keep them engaged.
As we get along into the Morningside neighborhood plan and we get a good handle on that, maybe mid-year, we'll have some information that we could make broadly available to neighborhoods that would give them kind of a basis to start with. And what occurs to me is to create maybe a manual of some kind that neighborhoods could use to get started.
Great. And thank you for calling out North Broadway parking.
You're welcome.
Maynard's Bakery is going to be glad to hear that, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Jan and I hear from folks up there quite a bit, so. Can I ask about another agency? I don't know if anyone else got this.
Okay, I have several people who are waiting in line. If you don't mind waiting a minute. Mayor Peterson, are you ready to ask your question?
Thank you. Actually, I have questions for the police department and for the library. So that would be Vicki Harden-Woods and Chief, whoever wants to go first. Thank you, Chief. I have two questions. One is, could you please describe the new foundation that has been formed for the library and tell people how we can make contributions to that, which previously we weren't able, the public was not able to make tax-deductible contributions so easily for police enhancements.
Thank you, Mayor, for that opportunity. A group of citizens has created a Salem Police Foundation, and it's in its infancy, I would say, and it just obtained tax-exempt status, and we will probably go public with some information. But if you're at all interested in donating to the Salem Police Foundation. There is a website that you can get information off of, and I believe it's Salem Police Foundation. You can search that way. Thank you.
Great, okay, good. And my question has to do with staffing levels, and I'm wondering how many positions are open and how many new positions might be filled this coming year?
Well, we actually have, I'm going to guess, around 11 openings right now.
Okay.
And we hope to fill all of them as soon as we can. I will tell you that I spoke of challenges earlier this evening. One of the challenges that we do have is finding people that can adequately fill those positions, and we work hard to do that. We're very particular about the people that we hire as Salem police officers, and I can tell you that some of our testing processes have not resulted in the number of potential candidates that we would like to have. But it is our goal to fill all of our openings as soon as we can.
Excellent. Well, with the numbers of people in the community looking for work, I would hope that they think of the city of Salem and for positions in an organization like yours. Will these 11 positions include the 4 that were budgeted last year but not filled?
Well, the 4 positions I believe you're talking about, Mayor, would be the 4 that resulted from the COPS grant. 2 of those positions are not going to be new positions any longer. They are going to help us with the school cuts. We were slated to lose some officers. We are going to utilize the COPS money that is available to retain those officers. So there will be 2 additional positions that we didn't fill last year that we will fill hopefully this year.
That you will fill this year. And I have a last little part question. I hope I'm not holding anybody else up. But understanding that Salem Kaiser Schools will not be funding school resource officers in the coming year, is that correct, except for high school?
No, that's not totally accurate. We used to have we used to and we still will have 1 police officer in every high school. We also used to have 1 officer in every middle school. We will now have 1 officer for every 2 middle schools. So we're going from 6 that were in our middle schools down to 3. And that will have an impact on the service we provide.
Right, okay. Thank you very much.
And did you say you wanted to ask Mr. O'Day something about the library, or did I miss you?
I do. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that would be Mr. O'Day. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, I've read the description and listened to the report this evening, and I understand about the elimination of the community resource director?
Community
manager?
Relations. Yeah, our community relations coordinator position.
Right, okay. In view of the fact that the library budget is being reduced, I'm prompted to ask a couple questions about not just that position, but also the fact that our Salem Kaiser schools are facing a tremendous budget cut in the coming year, and they're actually eliminating librarians. Have we thought at all about what the city of Salem might be able to do to assist students that need librarian services and library services? And is there some way that perhaps we could, rather than cutting the library budget, realize the need and make some sort of an allowance for the coming year?
Sure, Mayor, I'll start with your second part first. The allocation of the budget really is going to be up to this committee. So with respect to restoring or moving things around within our operations budget, that's your choice, and we'll certainly, if you're talking about a specific dollar figure, I know that Linda and I will work with you to identify where we'd recommend that comes from within the budget. With regard to coordination, I'm going to call upon B.J. Toey, our library administrator, to talk a little bit about our partnership efforts with the school district as well as others in the community. BJ was also formerly our youth services librarian, and so this is an area when it comes to children I know is near and dear to her heart, and I'm sure she'll have a much better answer than I would have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm B.J. Toey, Library Administrator. We currently are coordinating with schools. I don't believe there's any way that Salem Public Library can make up for the loss of school librarians. Those are not people who are standing behind a desk checking out books. Those are people who are teaching classes every period of every day at all 3 levels. So although the library will be there to provide support, we will provide homework support as they come into the library to get materials. We provide online support with our databases so that they can get information. Things like the World Book are available online through the public library and library cards. We'll continue to do our first grade bookmobile program that reaches all first graders and has since 1984, which I think is a wonderful way to introduce those young ones to the concept of a public library. And we have a new teen librarian who was our former community relations coordinator, Sonia Somerville. And she is really identifying ways to get out into the schools, which is an area that we have not been able to target in the past. So going to both middle and high school level schools to work with teachers and students and getting them interested in reading and using public libraries for both personal and school-related projects. We will continue to look for ways to work with the schools, but there is no way to make up for the lack of school librarians.
Right. A question to follow up on that then. What would enhance the library's opportunities as you're going out and reaching out to schools? What else do you need, or could you would possibly make that more effective if the money were available for that?
It really comes down to staffing level, having the staff back up to be able to dedicate someone to work more closely with the schools. As I said, we are planning to work more with the middle and high schools. We don't have the capacity to expand too much what we do with the elementary school level, and there are 45 elementary schools in the Salem-Keizer School District this year. So there's a lot of personnel that needs to be done. We do currently work with teachers. We pull materials that they have projects associated with. We'll do a reference shelf if they want kids to be able to come in and use materials. And what we'll have to do is to promote those services more closely with the teaching staff so that they're really aware of the things that the library can do to back them up. But it's a staffing issue.
Great. Thank you very much, and thanks for all that you do and for the things that the library adds to the community. Thank you so much. Thanks to your staff,
joy to be able to do it.
Thank you.
Member Clausen, if you still remember your question, and then it'll be Member Nanke.
Thank you, Chair. I remember my question very well. So part of my process when I go through this budget and I look at this is I look at the difference from 10-11 column that's in all these lines, and my eye gravitates towards dollars that are high and dollars that are low. And I saw this in Public Works. I didn't bring it up because it was a very small portion of that budget, but there's a line item in here that I'm going to pick on police, but it's nothing that police is doing wrong. This is something that our state needs to look at, but it's something that we need, it's at least worth mentioning. 2.6% of the 2011-12 budget is made up by the increase in this line item. This line item makes up for 34% of the total increase from the 10-11 budget to the 11-12 budget. So we have a, what is it, a $3 million or $1.1 odd million increase in the police budget this year, and 34% of that is directly attributed to the PERS retirement contribution by the city. That's painful. In the Salem Police, that's $877,000 this year. That cost us more this year than it did last year. When you add the fire department to that, that's another $811,000. And that's nothing that the city has any control over. It's something that's extremely painful to our general fund, and it's something that I think that we need to be really talking to our state legislators about, because when we have a $100 million general fund and we have an increase of $1.7 million, it's a very painful hit to our budget. So I think it's something that's worth bringing to the light of day. Tom Beasley's presentation was about personnel costs, and some of those costs are way out of our control.
Member Nanki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just chime in on the end of that. Yeah, no one should have a guaranteed anything in life. That's not the way we were made. Everybody's on the same playing field, taking risks on how they invest their money. No one should be guaranteed, even when the market goes down, to take increases. That being said, in regards to the neighborhood plans, my intention was not to have them taken straight away right now, but in following up on that, probably would be smart, whereas Morningside Neighborhood Association has some different demographics and what have you, maybe than some of the others that were at least looking to make that skeleton outline that other people can start on sooner as well, trying to fill in their information. And not necessarily just say, not Morningside. Nen has an issue with Madrona or something, yeah. Beyond that, wanted to talk just a second about library and bookmobile and materials, because I know we were hacking materials last year, and when is hacking too many materials too much? Because we still need to stay current as a library.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer that question, at least take a first shot at it. You know, one of the things, just a little bit more history about this shift that we're making in funding this year and funding the adult services position. Because that position had historically been funded by an outside source, that person that filled that was not actually an employee of the city. They were an employee of that foundation, which limited how much we could use that position for. And as the needs of the library changed and the increase on the library's management team occurred, we were unable to shift that work to that person because they essentially weren't part of the city staffing. With this change, however, what we're doing is bringing it in, repositioning that position, part of the funding that used to go to that position, into a management role that allows us to have coverage on every floor of the library and a more equitable distribution of duties. So as BJ told you just a few moments ago, that when it comes to our number one need, we can have a building full of books, but if we don't have people there to help others access it, we're not very effective. And although we are concerned about the level of reduction we're making in our materials budget, it was suggested but not necessarily expressed, and I appreciate the question because it gives me an opportunity to do so, that the way we backfill these cuts is with the help of our support boards. As Jacqueline Schindel indicated, you know, with this cut, makes her job a little bit harder. What we're going to be doing is turning to those support boards in their private fundraising to help backfill as much of that cut as we can. And I don't have specific stats. I'm not sure, Kelly, if you or BJ do, as to how much materials contributions have come from those boards in the past, but I can tell you they've been significant.
Okay, since the list keeps getting longer, I'll tell you who's on it. I'm next because I put myself in line. Then Member Kalevite, and then Member Bennett, and Member Cannon, and Member Motley. Whoops, better put you down. My question is for Director Woods. Actually, I have a couple of questions. The first one is during our pre-meeting briefing, my understanding, I just wanted to make sure of that, also for all the other neighborhood people who are watching, is that the level of support to neighborhood associations is the same this year as last year. Is that correct?
It is the same. In fact, it's slightly higher financially, but the allocation of staff resource is exactly the same.
And also the communication funds, if they need to do something extra like a land use notice that doesn't legally have to go to all the people who might feel that they are impacted or something like that. That's very good to know.
Also the same.
And my other question was about the neighborhood plans. Can you give is it possible to give a brief answer as to how staff actually uses those when an issue comes up?
Yes. Was that brief enough? Yes, it is possible to give a brief answer. We rely on them whenever a comprehensive plan change comes forward, and there's a neighborhood plan that also applies in that neighborhood, we examine the neighborhood plan to make sure that the change that is proposed is consistent with what is in the neighborhood plan. And that is about all that we rely on them for now, mostly because there are many neighborhoods that don't have them, and the ones that do, they are very out of date.
Such as those that have almost 30-year-old
Yes.
ones.
And that's not unusual.
Yes. All right, after that, I have Member Calebite and Member Bennett. So,
My question is for the Chief of Police. I'm just curious, and maybe I'm exposing my ignorance here, about cyber crimes. Is the Salem Police Department getting involved in solving cyber crimes like hacking for Social Security numbers, credit card numbers, log-on credentials? I'm thinking about things like using Craigslist, luring minors for sex, those sorts of internet-related crimes. Or is that a totally different jurisdiction? I know that often transcends city boundaries.
No, it's a great question, and they're difficult. I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Steve Belshaw, who was in charge of our investigations division, to answer that question.
Yes, the Salem Police Department does get involved in those. We have one detective that is full-time computer forensics that does child pornography, all those types of things. We do a lot of those things. We have a number of fraud detectives that do stuff with the FBI, with Secret Service, Social Security, all of those things. They do get very complicated because they do go across state lines and even across international boundaries. So we do a lot of those things. They're tough to prosecute, but we do those things, plus our crime prevention unit does a lot of community interaction to help people with how to not become victims on the internet and some of those things. So we can always expand those. Technology is growing much faster than our ability to keep up with it, and so we're using some of our grant funds to enhance some of those things. We just purchased a new computer that will help us be able to retrieve information off a number of different types of cell phones and things like that, because the internet has gone more from just computers to the smartphones and the iPhones and those things. So it's much more accessible, and we're having to try and keep up with those things.
Okay.
You'd also mentioned Craigslist, and I can tell you many years ago when I was what I call a real police officer, I used to work drugs and vice, and a lot of it was at street level. Now a lot of, for instance, prostitution type activity is on Craigslist, and that is one of the functions of our street crimes unit that tries to investigate those sorts of crimes. And I would say our detectives are involved for the child sex trafficking to try and impact and save children from being victimized in that respect.
So maybe a suggestion as a neighbor, your officers are really faithful in coming to our association meetings every month, and they provide awesome statistics. I would love to maybe see a category, cyber crimes, that it would help us track the increase or decrease. Because when a bicycle is stolen from my front yard, it's very tangible. When my Social Security number is stolen, it feels less tangible, but the impact is much greater. And so I would love to see that maybe, it's just a suggestion, see that included in the stats that are provided every month.
Sure, and we'll be happy to look at that. It might be a little tougher to catch because it goes across a lot of different divisions, but we can certainly look at that and see how we could capture that.
all right, Member Bennett, and then Member Cannon and Motley, and I don't want to scare anyone else off. I'm just making sure we know we have a list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions, one for the city manager. What percentage of payroll is now associated with PERS?
Oh, percent of payroll associated with PERS. Let me see. I don't have that number in my head, but if you'll give us a minute, we'll get that for you.
Okay.
Okay.
in part, I was really interested in Mr. Beasley's charts, and I know in school districts it is a really rapidly mounting percentage of payroll, and it's uncontrollable by the local jurisdiction.
Right. Mr. Gamper, do you have that, or you need to check so we
Okay.
can get that?
I wanted to ask the fire chief a couple of questions. I am, last budget cycle, we eliminated a portion, I think it was one firefighter per ladder truck.
That's
and I'm curious if we saw any change in injury data on those trucks or as a result of that reduction.
No, we did not. We did have an increase in our workers' comp rate, which was not based on number of injuries. It was based on how it's calculated. It used to be calculated per employee across the city, and now it's calculated on your usage of the fund, and fire is a pretty big user of that fund, so our share went up, so we're paying our fair share now, not based on number of injuries we had.
Okay, so that change is a function of the way it's calculated?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, not that we had that many more injuries.
Okay, and then kind of go into the training just a little bit. As I recall, you've lost training officer or officers over time. How is the training regimen going with the fire department? Are we meeting expectations of firefighters and goals for the department to keep folks at the correct level of both training and physical?
Yes, we are. It is correct that we lost, I believe in 2005 or 6, we lost one of our training officers. We have 2 training officers remaining and a deputy chief in that training division. A lot of those training things that we were doing with the 3 training officers, we have pushed back to battalion chiefs and company officers and asked them to step up and take more of a role in training their individual crews. We're still meeting all the mandatory requirements for training, all the EMS training, all those things. We're more creative with the way we do it. We're still getting all those things done. Of course, you can always have more training. We try to capture what we can. I mentioned the state hospital drills. Our training division does an excellent job of looking out in the community to see what is available where we can. That was a phone call. We said, hey, can we use your building because we know you're tearing it down. We got several weeks in the spring and the fall of crews getting out and actually getting to do some destructive work on buildings that you don't get to do in a normal training scenario. So we try to take advantage of those, and I would say that the folks that we have in our training division do a great job, and we're meeting all those requirements.
And then just a final question, the response time. What is our average community-wide response time to a call? Fire.
We're meeting our council goal is we need to be there in 5.5 minutes to the priority calls, which are life-threatening fire emergency calls, 85% of the time, or the 85th percentile. We're meeting that 73% of the time right now.
Where aren't you meeting that? Are there parts of town that are underserved?
It's across the board. And we've got I didn't want to bore you with the dot map, but we've got a dot map that shows you green and red dots. And the green dots are ones that we make within the response time, and the red dots are the ones we don't make it. The core of town is where 60% of all of our calls happen. It's the most dense, and so there's more red dots there. But when you look out, there's dots in every district. It's really a matter of where the calls come in and which resource is available. If Engine 3, which is our busiest engine, is on a call and a call comes into that district, Engine 2 or Engine 1 or Engine 8 have to respond to that call. So it's a larger distance they have to travel. And we do really try to keep our folks in their districts. One of the things we've done along with training is our distance education program, where we use a video system to train them in their station, so they're in their district instead of driving somewhere to get trained. At Station 6 at the airport, they stay in their district. So we really focus on that. There are times when we have to bring them out of their districts, but if we keep them in district as much as possible, then that's the highest reliability percentage we can get out of those units.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We have Member Cannon, followed by Member Motley and Mayor Peterson.
Question for Ms. Woods. neighborhood plans for Morningside. I think you gave a number, but I didn't pick
It's
it up.
about the cost
Yes.
that we've budgeted for it, about $64,000.
Assuming we came up with $64,000, could we put some of that money toward NEN and Grant?
Yes.
Okay. But about the same amount of money to do the same work?
Probably more, because for NIN, which is a new neighborhood plan, so Morningside has a plan to start with. So I'm guessing the range is probably $65,000 to $85,000.
Thank you very much.
Member Motley?
Thank you. I have 3 points. The first being with fire. It's not necessarily for anyone to come up, a comment rather than a question. And that was, we met yesterday and I offered this. I offer it again now in a more public venue. I want to commend the fire department for, in the budget, actually putting in their performance measures, actually putting goals as well as their actual achievements, so that we have something to observe how their measurements are working and how well they are working towards achieving their goals, because now we know what their goals are. I think that was great, and it's the only PM chart that I've seen so far that had goals separately stated, so atta girl. Okay, I'd like to ask concerning police, I'd like the chief to extrapolate some on the comment on page 113 regarding one staff assistant serving the entire division. This is the patrol division. For scheduling, correspondence, court appearance coordination, telephone reception, etc. We discussed this briefly yesterday, and my bottom line question to you was whether that was adequate or not. Your response was no, and I'd like you to extrapolate a little bit for the full committee here. Why?
Well, actually, I appreciate the question. We have one support person that works in our shift commander's office and works the hours basically from 8 to 5 or so. And my comment to you was it would be nice to have a second person in there. We're unable to staff our shift commander's office either by civilian personnel or actually by our shift lieutenants 24/7. The citizen in there allows our lieutenants to do other things other than clerical functions. And so I appreciate the question. I will tell you, if we were going to add staff, that probably wouldn't be our number one priority. However, we could certainly use support staff in a variety of areas, but we just haven't had the opportunity.
Thank you. Then for community development, I have some questions. I'm curious on, I have two areas of interest. The first had to do with permits and inspections and testing and the good work that the planning folks do. I am unaware if there is any connection whatsoever between those functions with the city and the construction and permitting and et cetera of Courthouse Square. Are they related in any way, shape, or form?
Have we ever, I'm sorry, I didn't understand, have we ever what? And
Did the city perform any permitting or inspections or testing as regards Courthouse Square and its construction?
we did issue permits for the construction, building permits for the
Yes.
construction of Courthouse Square. We did do building inspection services for Courthouse Square. We didn't do any testing, and I think the issue has been, if I can get perhaps directly to the point, there has been, some of the issues have revolved around the cement that was poured for that facility. And that kind of testing is done, but it's done by special inspectors. And those special inspectors are retained by the contractor themselves, and then the information is submitted to the building department to show that those inspections have been done. So we did not directly participate in that.
Okay, and when they get those reports, do they evaluate them? Do they
No, they just accept, they're just certifications, and they just accept that they have been
put it in
done.
the file and call it fair?
Yes.
Okay?
We don't have a concrete testing lab. I'm not sure, though. Excuse me, I just
Go
went in.
ahead.
We don't have a concrete testing lab, and so we do accept those tests as they're certified by a certified lab.
Okay. But our inspect, we do physically inspect, and we did physically inspect, and apparently we're happy with what we saw. We didn't stop it or anything.
They passed the inspections that the city did, but this actually is part of the building, and I mean, that relates to the building and safety fund, not the functions that you were reviewing tonight. Those kinds of inspections are related to land use, zoning, and then code enforcement kinds of things.
Member Motley, do you have questions related to the budget before us?
Absolutely, yes. On account 52670, we have an item for fiscal analysis on growth and annexations. It's a $60,000 line item.
Yes.
Can you tell me the nature of that? Or it looks pretty straightforward. You're trying to determine whether city growth and annexations is beneficial or detrimental. Is that true?
Yes, that's exactly true.
Have we ever found it detrimental?
It varies from case to case. We actually have a system now. There was a study that was done 10 or 12 years ago that analyzed a similar question, out of date. And we try to analyze each one as it comes up. And it depends on, some properties, for instance, are not, probably will cost more money to serve than they will provide in taxes. But that doesn't mean you should only have properties that pay enough taxes to support what they demand, because otherwise you might not have the whole mix of the kinds of uses that you need in a community. So it varies from case to case, and it can vary from geographic area to geographic area and from type of use to type of use.
Okay. I have a couple of people waiting to speak. You have one more question?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Mayor Peterson and then Member Vick.
Thank you again. Actually, this question would be for Vicki Harden Woods because it has to do with the neighborhoods.
Yes.
I don't have it in my binder, but I did receive an email that broke out the amount of funding allocated for the neighborhood partnership effort. And I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me, but could you please tell us what that amount of money is and how many neighborhoods are serviced by that?
Yes, I can happily do that. The email that you all received today was a result of questions that were asked yesterday that actually Chair Strozet asked about the funding for neighborhoods. And my recollection is that the dollar amount was about $200,000 that supports the neighborhood associations and the neighborhood partnership programs together. So, and I see that Cindy Easterly is checking that number for me right now to make sure that I'm right. The neighborhood services, I'm sorry, the neighborhood services is $215,000 this year, which is just about the same as or $215,000 next year, which is just about the same as this year. And the neighborhood partnership program is supported to the degree of about $92,000, and that's just about the same. So we haven't reduced that in any way.
So the $92,000 is for the two neighborhoods that are receiving the neighborhood partnership program?
Yes.
Okay. In the binder, it says for neighborhood services, a total of $308,555. So is that all part of that 355?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a combination of those two.
I see. Okay. And if we are allocating funds for neighborhood planning, where do those funds show up in here?
Those funds show up in the planning division budget, so that would be page 36. And under the long-range planning component, that $490,000 that you see down at the bottom of that page,
okay,
it's included in that.
Okay. If the Budget Committee chose to do this, would we be able to move money from the neighborhood partnership program, which only benefits 2 neighborhoods, to instead get these plans in place for the various neighborhoods that are waiting and waiting for neighborhood planning?
That's a change that could be made, and I think I would let the city manager speak to how much detail of that the committee might want to participate in.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understood that comment.
I think maybe the
So I'll
answer
just
is
answer.
yes.
Okay. So what would happen is you would, the staff who are involved in the neighborhood partnership program would not be the staff that would do the planning. And so that decision, as I'm sure you do understand, would be ending that program and then allocating money to perhaps do one additional neighborhood plan.
Yeah, likely.
Yeah.
Okay, because the neighborhood partnership program is an annual program, whereas neighborhood planning, you plan it and then that's good for a while.
Yes,
So
you
you
hope
would
so.
be able to move from
Do one a year,
neighborhood,
probably one more a year.
from neighborhood to neighborhood.
Although I have to tell you that I would hope that we are able to allocate money to neighborhood planning every year for some years into the future so we can get our neighborhood plans up to snuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. All right, thank you.
If I could just add, in terms of long-range planning, the city has been very involved in current planning when the economy was good and did very little long-range planning. And then council directed that we do the Unified Development Code update. And so that really, for the last couple of years, has been the primary focus of long-range planning. And now, in addition to doing that, as that's kind of winding down, we have the economic opportunity analysis and the Morningside Neighborhood Plan, and I think there's one other project, the mixed-use neighborhood center zoning. So those are examples of the types of long-range planning we've done. So as those efforts are finished over the next, year or two, the Unified Development Code is completed and the economic opportunities analysis is completed. The plan is that we would move more into, as Vicki showed on her slides, into the neighborhood plans and some of those other long-term planning efforts that have really been neglected over time because of the amount of construction activity we've had in the last few years.
Good. Yeah. And if I may, Glenn Gross, our planning administrator, reminded me that when we have a more up-to-date neighborhood plan, like we do in West Salem, the Neighborhood Mixed Use Center is actually an effort to implement that plan. So they do get used when they're more up to date.
Okay. And I want to add, because staff are here who work so hard on the neighborhood relationships and the neighborhood partnership, please don't think that my questions have any reflection at all on the quality of work that you do. We know your commitment to the community, to the neighborhoods is very, very strong. So rest assured.
All right, Member Vic, and then me.
My question is for the fire department. I guess what I'm looking for is a little clarification of the budget increase. I'm not quite understanding. I understand there's a big PERS increase, but I'm looking at the fire department budget and seeing almost a 6% increase, and then kind of comparing it to the police department, which I say roughly is analogous. And they've got about a 3% increase, yet experiencing the same PERS problems. So would you help me a little bit in understanding the budget increase?
We, a couple of items here. I'm going to find my right page. The PERS increase you've already mentioned. The other thing that the fire department had was, I mentioned earlier, the workers' comp adjustment, which was about $125,000 increase. We had a contract, we settled a contract this year, so there was an increase in benefits there for the employees. Looking at some of our other big ones here.
Is it a 3-year contract?
3-year contract, that's correct. I mean, those are the big ticket items that we had. We did eliminate a position. We eliminated the deputy fire marshal position, so that's a reduction on that side. And we've done some reorganization, which will actually be some reductions as well. Again, $800,000 in PERS increases is a pretty big hit.
Yeah, you're going to have that next year too, right?
The following year, I believe.
Yes, in 2 years. The primary increases in the fire department are really related to personal services. It's the PERS. We have another chief. We weren't completely staffed at our management level the year before, so that's part of the difference. And then workers' comp is allocated differently this year. I think general liability went up in all departments, so they're primarily related to personal services increases.
When you talk about percentages, we're 87.1% personnel costs and 12.9 materials and services. So we're about as lean as we can go in materials and services, and to keep the boots on the street, that's what we're at.
Do you expect to see that kind of an increase drop some next year?
I'm sorry?
Do you expect to see a decrease in that rate of increase? I mean, it's a 6% in a flat revenue year is a lot.
Certainly. I think we probably will, based on we won't
I
see
think
that
it would be
PERS
more
increase.
stable next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, after me, it's Member Berger, and I don't think I have anyone else signed up. I wanted to speak to the Neighborhood Partnership Program because our neighborhood, the Highland neighborhood, was one of the 2 neighborhoods for a number of years, and we're no longer on it, but I still strongly support the program. Its effectiveness is a combination of the quality of staff and the neighborhood. It viewed from people who don't participate in it, they often think it's just those 2 neighborhoods. Essentially, Highland, when we had that program, we were the lead neighborhood, but it benefited any of the North Salem feeder neighborhoods that chose to participate, and we worked especially through the community progress team in our part of town, which was North Neighbors, or N2, and it's called Partnership for a reason. It is not for every neighborhood. It's for neighborhoods that especially have challenges, maybe more low income, maybe more minority, maybe they've had some crime problems. Coincidentally or not, the crime has really gone down in our neighborhood in the last decade. It's been quite a dramatic difference. But the other key is the neighborhood and its partners have to be ready to be partners. It's not something that's done for the neighborhood. It helps you learn how to develop relationships and partners and work with other organizations, which we are still doing. It's a lot harder without the staff person who is, in the years I was involved, the current staff person is by far the best. It would be a real loss to the city if they didn't have that particular staff person. And Member Berger?
Yeah, I have 2 questions, one for Vicki, but I want to start with the police chief.
I got to remember to do that backwards like that.
Not good? That's why I go last. I'm on page 117, just so you can follow along. I just kind of went to your biggest line item, and I just want to understand what we're doing here. It looks like salaries and wages go up 7%, and I'm just wondering, are we increasing our employees in patrol, or are we just going up 7% just on the natural raises?
Well, I think I can answer that. If not, I'll ask our management analyst to do so. I think those salary increases represent the 2 new cops officers and the retention of 2 additional that we were going to lose from the schools that have actually been added to the patrol division. So there's an addition of probably 4 officers there, and I think that is the biggest increase, and that's why that increase is there. So it's movement. Actually, you would probably see a similar decrease in the investigations division where some of those officers had been assigned.
Okay. Also, a few lines below that, we have a 35% increase in incentives. And I don't know what incentives are in patrol.
Well, I'm not sure either.
It's the, in our police union contract, we have incentive pay. And so if people are in special teams, like the SWAT team, and
Right.
Chief, you can
That's right,
describe
yeah.
what those teams are.
Yeah. Some of our incentives might be, you might call it, we used to call it hazardous pay for specific duties, motorcycles, SWAT team, bomb team. They're given a little extra percentage because of the hazardous duty that they have. We also, is education in there? If you have education, you get additional incentives, and that's per our contracts.
Okay. I guess I would like a little more clarification. A 35% increase.
I'm sorry, could you speak into
sorry.
the mic a little better?
I thank you for the answer, but I think I might want a little follow-up on, I mean, that's a $230,000 number on incentives, which seems more like a general pot, which from year to year probably shouldn't go up 35% without a little more explanation.
I think we can get that answer for you.
And I don't necessarily have to have it now. If you can answer it right now, I'm fine.
Yeah, I can answer it. And generally, I'm Linda Weber, I'm the management analyst for the police department. And for budget purposes, we have to include the benefits that we pay on that incentive.
Could you put the tip of the mic closer? Thanks.
A little better? We have to, and perhaps Deborah Neville can answer it more clearly, but we have to budget for the benefits that we pay on those incentives, and we have to include it in that line item, so it looks like there's an increase, but the actual expenditures that we pay are just the amount that we pay on incentives.
I'll add another couple cents to this discussion. As the chief pointed out, we also took a few officers out of investigations, and in looking at the line item that's in investigations, that went down by almost $29,000. So some of that increase is in transferring those employees into patrol. So about $29,000. So you still have $200,000 of an increase. And Linda is correct in responding that the way our automated system works, we can't attribute the PERS that is earned on an incentive to the PERS line item as one example. So this number is actually inflated to allow for appropriation authority for the roll-ups, PERS and FICA, that doesn't actually get paid out of that account. When they actually are paid, they're paid out of the appropriate line items. But this is our way of ensuring there's appropriation authority to cover all the expenses associated with the employees.
I'm getting more comfortable with the number. I'm still not there yet, but that's okay. I'll move on. The line item right above that, we are estimating almost $170,000 less in overtime. Is that because of the more increase of people in patrol, so we don't anticipate needing as much overtime?
Back to Linda.
Yeah, it's also attributable to another change in how we've recorded incentives. So whenever we pay overtime, there's a part of that overtime that is an incentive. And so in prior years, that was recorded as overtime, but starting in this fiscal year, it's recorded as an incentive.
Thank you. I'm on to Vicki now.
All right. I believe we have an answer to Member Bennett's question from staff.
Yes, Mr. Gabbard from the Finance Department has that information about what percent of payroll PERS makes up.
I'm Doug Gabbard with the Administrative Services Department. I apologize for making you wait for this information. So let me throw some numbers at you for the coming fiscal year, and this will actually apply for both years of the coming biennium. I'll specifically address Tier 1 and Tier 2 because about 75% of our reportable payroll is Tier 1, Tier 2. So
PERS Tier 1 plan.
I'm sorry?
The PERS Tier 1 plan. Everyone may not know what that means.
Oh, so PERS Tier 1 and Tier 2, that's sort of the legacy tier That's all I'm going to say about that.
We older employees are in that tier.
I'm op SERP. For the coming biennium, the base net employer contribution rate is 12.9%. That includes the impact of our side account. The employer pickup is 6%, as it has been, and the impact of our pension obligation bonds about 4.7%. So that all nets out to about 23.6%. And if I may anticipate a possible question beyond that, if we did not have our side account, our total rates would be a full percentage point higher.
Just to follow up then, so we are rapidly approaching, it sounds like 2 years from now, 25% of payroll in this single benefit.
That's right.
Wow.
Or higher. If
We
they
have
do
no
another
control.
double rate color increase.
Sorry.
Well, if there's another double rate color increase 2 years from now, which is anticipated, it'll actually likely be higher than that.
And this is with what was really a smart move in terms of your bond sale to help pay for some of the obligations.
That's right. Yeah, it's saved a few $1 million since we did it. I think about a little over $4 million, if I recall correctly.
That's right. And you'll see part of that analysis in the budget message, but it has turned out to be a winner. In fact, when we looked at this early on in the budget process, even if we had known of the historic plunge in the stock market, even if we had known that in advance, it still would have worked out slightly favorably. And so we still would have done it, which surprised me.
Thank you.
Oh, Member George.
Are we approaching a point, because of this PERS thing, to where we need to revisit looking at contract employees for where we don't have to pay out the PERS that we are? Because, I mean, are we going to get to a point to where we're not able to afford to have as many people that are, and I know I'm treading on ground that there'll be people throwing rocks at me here in a minute, but we've talked about contract employees before, that we don't have to pay PERS to them. And, you know, I'm just wondering, you know, at what point do we look at that again?
There's a state law that was passed either last year or the year before, I don't recall now which, that does not allow us to contract out services solely for the purpose of saving money or saving benefit costs. We actually do contract quite a bit of work in the city, millions of dollars every year out. We don't keep specialty staff employed as staff. We don't keep specialty engineers, specialty chemists, for example, and we contract that work out because we don't need someone to do that work 40 hours a week all year long. The PERS issue, I think it's important to remember that the reason these costs are so high is because we did have that really unprecedented, horrible drop in the stock market. All qualified pension plans need to be adequately funded. And the ways PERS is funded is two ways. One is through contributions from the employer, and then the biggest extent of it is gains in the market. Unfortunately, there were tremendous losses in the market, and so these high increases for a few years are really to stabilize that fund so that it can meet its lawful obligations. I anticipate, 2 years ago, we actually had a reduction in PERS rates. So I anticipate, over the next probably 4 years, something in that time frame probably, our PERS rates will start to go down. So this is the loss dipped, and now the rates are increasing, but it'll stabilize over time.
All right. Oh, Member Nanki, and then, oh. Member Nanki?
Yes, just in follow-up to a question out of Northeast Neighbors again as well in regards to graffiti and painting equipment. If the chief could speak to whether or not they could find something in their budget or through nonprofit, or if they've had discussions on the most efficient ways to remove or cover over graffiti.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say if our graffiti coordinator lets us know that she's in need of a generator will probably take care of that within our current budget.
All right, did I overlook someone who had their hand up? Yes, I did. Okay. Thank you all for helping me see these hands. Member Berger.
It's you. You noted that a neighborhood plan was around $65,000 to $85,000 roughly, depending on lots of factors. You also noted in your presentation that the Sustainable Cities Initiative was doing work in the neighborhood just north of here on Mission and Commercial, and you wanted to continue that effort, and you said you were putting $80,000 towards that effort. What tangible item are we getting for that $80,000? Continuing the effort is kind of vague.
It should be actually regulatory changes, likely an overlay zone for the district with design standards.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you want to take a few minutes break before we go to the internal service funds?
What's your pleasure? Okay, we'll take a very brief break. Procedures. We can, not necessarily that we want to, but we may meet until 10 o'clock, and then after that, we have to either go home or someone needs to make a motion to extend. Hopefully that will not be necessary. And I would hope that those who talk the most would not be the ones, though, to vote against an extension.
And I think these can be fairly quick, and I promise you they'll be scintillating. So, there's 20 minutes.
I don't think that was part of my instructions.
More empty promises.
I think they need to be scintillating to get people to settle down.
Internal Services Department, yeah. Well, the best thing I can do is offer to be as brief.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Stroza and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Tony Mounts. I'm the Administrative Services Director. Tonight it's my pleasure to present the Administrative Services Department budget for the 2011-12 fiscal year. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge my management staff, and particularly the management analyst for the department, Ryan Zink, who's been instrumental in putting this department budget together. And these folks are great resources, and they're available to answer questions if there are any afterwards. So my presentation, I say, will be brief. We're just covering the three divisions in the general fund. Fleet services will be addressed on May 4th. For the coming budget year, the department's proposed general fund budget of $5.2 million maintains the same level of service in next fiscal year. Talk a little bit about what the divisions do. Municipal court provides the community a fair and impartial forum for adjudicating matters presented to the court by the same police department, the neighborhood enhancement division, parking services, and the city attorney's office. At the center of a healthy justice system, the court provides judicial outcomes that reflect equity, equality, fairness, and integrity, and help provide a stable and predictable environment for Salem businesses, residents, and visitors. During the last calendar year, the court received over 20,000 new case filings and disposed of over 25,000 cases with a clearance rate of 122%, as staff continues to work through a backlog of old cases from prior years. Each month, the court sees approximately 3,500 citizens at the front counter, handles about 1,700 phone calls, 1,500 incoming pieces of mail. The court sets up over 200 new payment agreements for people who need help paying their fines. We issue about 350 license suspensions and send over 500 cases on to collections to collect money owed to the city. Court's adjudication of cases results in the receipt of approximately $3 million in fines to the general fund every year. The finance division is the our responsibility is really to be a steward for the public funds entrusted to the city and the Urban Renewal Agency for provision of community services. Finance's core services are receiving payments, paying vendors, and making payroll. Every day, the city receives payments of about $100,000 to $200,000 a day, involving transactions of cash, check, credit, debit cards, and wire transfers. That's the minimum. Oftentimes, during the year, we'll have several million. Each week, staff issue $1 to $2 million in checks to at least 400 different vendors. During construction season, that can easily double. Every 2 weeks, we process a $2 million payroll for 1,500 part-time and full-time employees and pay all withholdings. Treasury staff manage the daily flow of cash through the city's accounts, address problem payments, and reconcile accounts with issued and outstanding checks. The accounting section ensures that the thousands of monthly transactions are posted to the right accounts, the books balance each month, accurate financial reports are available for managers and outside agencies, and that our annual financial report meets all legal and professional standards. Finally, finance supports departments and the City Council with financial trend analysis, review of rate proposals, and preparation of the annual capital improvement plan. The Contracts and Procurement Division helps city departments and the Renewal Agency and the Housing Authority attain goods and services and equipment necessary to deliver community programs in a manner that meets all regulatory requirements. The division is responsible for over $200 million of annual purchases through over 25,000 purchase orders, and utilizes over 600 annual contracts and over 600 formal bids and proposal and bid requests. When city property is no longer needed, the division works with the Oregon Department of Administrative Services to store and dispose of property at public auction. And finally, the Administration Division provides day-to-day coordination of programs that ensure customer needs are met and supports the Department of Financial Management and Policy. I've selected just 3 of the accomplishments that we've had over the last year as illustrative of our general focus within the department. Our kind of focus has been to collect revenue that's due the city, reduce the cost of our business processes wherever possible, and address the new regulatory and legal environment that we're in. So Finance and Court worked this last year together for our first participation in the Department of Revenue's Tax Intercept Program for collection of court fines. This resulted in an additional about $62,000 of revenue received from accounts that had already been sent to collections, in some cases a number of years ago. The Treasury section has been working with our banking services provider to examine all the fees that we get charged for banking services, and through some basic business process changes, we've saved over $15,000 this year in banking service charges. And then finally, the accounting section worked to incorporate requirements from the new GAS, Government Accounting Standards Board's pronouncement 54, which requires a restatement of our reserves in our financial report, and they got that addressed a year ahead of time. In the coming year, we're going to be focusing again in these critical areas. The court is going to be finalizing a new business process to manage parking citations that will allow us to move those citations on to collections for enforcement, as well as expanding our customers' ability to pay fines online. Right now, that's only available for photo red light. Finance will be completing an internal controls self-assessment to allow us to identify areas of risk and provide the basis of a prioritized plan for internal reviews, something that we're developing in-house. And finally, finance staff is working with information technology to prepare for a major upgrade to the city's core financial systems that will take place in the 2012-13 fiscal year. There we go.
Thank you.
And next is Information Technology and Facilities, and Ida Salazar.
Good evening. I'm Ida Salazar, Director of Information Technology and Facility Services. Tonight, it is my pleasure to present to you the Information Technology and Facility Services proposed budget for 2011-2012. However, before I begin, I'd like to take a moment and thank the Department of Employees for their tremendous work they've done throughout the year. Our management team is here tonight. I have Craig Cole, Ty Godfrey, Krishna Namburi, and Tiffany Corbett. This year's proposed budget is $8.9 million. Of $8.9 million, reduces materials and services costs by 2.2% and capital outlay by 41%. These reductions, however, are offset by a 12% increase in benefits, resulting in an overall increase of 5% in personal services. The net effect of all expense categories is a 1.9% increase over the current year. The IT and Facility Services Department's primary objective is the planning, managing, and maintaining of the assets, structures, and systems that support the delivery of services to the community. This is provided through a broad range of expertise: programmers, systems analysts, building operations experts, technical support, custodial staff, and database administrators in 2 divisions with a total staff of 61. As stated, our budget is 8.6% of the city's general fund budget and just 2% of the overall city budget. It is important to note that 93% of our budget is dedicated to existing contracts, building maintenance and supplies, utility payments, and maintaining the current level of staffing. This leaves little room for system or equipment failures, emergencies, or unexpected service requests. The IT division is a complex division that works very hard not to be noticed. IT stores, manages, and moves the data and information for city leaders to make sound business decisions. With a robust geospatial database supplying real-time information to public safety agencies and the park's water sprinkler systems being remotely activated over a 99.999% reliable network. Can you hear me now? And financial systems, web services, permitting applications, and water and sewer billing systems that never skip a beat. IT may not deliver the services directly to the community, but it makes delivering services to the community better. The Facility Services Division is a lean group of 27 full-time staff who maintain, service, and preserve just under 100 facilities throughout the city. They are responsible for providing a clean and safe work environment and managing many of the municipal and tenant improvement projects you have heard about earlier tonight. Their services include support to the historical heritage sites, such as Bush House, Bush Barn, Ecoscene, as well as the Discovery Village, 11 fire stations, city shops complex, and 6 parking structures. This past year, IT continued to deploy technologies that improve our ability to manage data while reducing hardware requirement. Almost 25% of the applications in use are provided through a virtualized, if I may, an internal cloud environment. An emphasis has been placed on increasing our functional and technical expertise in supporting the financial information management system. Our strategy is to reduce reliance on outside IT consulting services and become more and more self-supporting all the time. Facilities has focused on improving the preservation of our building systems while reducing both the cost of operating and the footprint of use. Projects like the Airport Phase 3 expansion, Bush Barn Conservatory restoration, the Teen Library, and Fire Station 1 seismic upgrade are just a few examples. To manage such a wide number of projects and maximize internal expertise, facilities partners with contractors to remain cost-effective. Last year, just over $5 million was spent on contracted services, of which approximately 90% was not from the general fund. In addition to the building improvements and seismic upgrades, through a concentrated effort of reducing and reusing The city has recognized an energy savings this fiscal year of just over 309,000 kilowatt hours, or about $30,000, at City Hall and the library. The savings were achieved through close monitoring of the building automated management system and lighting upgrades funded through the ARA program. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act provided an award of about $1.5 million in funding for community and municipal projects. The municipal projects have focused on energy efficient lighting and HVAC systems at many of the city's facilities. For example, here in the City Council chambers, in the library. Some of the shop buildings will soon be upgraded. To date, we anticipate saving 2,250 gallons of gas, or close to $10,000, with the installation of 32 solar-powered compacting trash cans in the parks throughout the city. To date, 61% of the ARA funds have been spent. All ARA-funded projects are to be completed by or before June of 2012. With just over $300,000, the community project funding has been used to establish a community forum for energy efficiency and sustainability, a commercial lighting loan fund, and work has begun on the improvement of pedestrian and bike pathways. In addition, as you may have read in the paper, we will soon see the installation of 14 electric vehicle charging stations. In closing, our proposed budget holds the line on expenditures, focuses on the maintenance of existing systems and structures, expands our technical expertise and knowledge, provides management of numerous technology projects, 4 of which were identified in the police department this evening, and works to further improve our operating efficiencies through the use of Lean Six Sigma methodologies. With a very tight budget, our focus will be on extending the useful life of all technologies currently in use. This applies equally to both IT and facility services. We must leverage the technologies in place in lieu of adding new whenever possible. Our goal, as it has been in the past, it will be in the future, is to deliver the most comprehensive customer service by the most efficient and cost-effective methods possible, with a smile. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ida. And next we have Connie Manell, who'll do Human Resources.
Connie's been here a long time.
Thank goodness.
I'm one of those in Tier 1 or Tier 2 PERS.
I just meant tonight, I didn't mean with the city.
I'm one of those too. Good evening, Madam Chair and Budget Committee members, and I have been here a long time. The Human Resources Department continues to provide centralized personnel services to all of our departments. As you can see, we have 3 different major divisions within our organization. Benefits and risk management is self-insured, and we'll be focusing on human resources tonight as opposed to the benefits and risk management, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks from tonight. As you can see, we have 8 very dedicated employees assigned to human resources that's funded through the general fund. We provide a full variety of services, and although we have 8, their workload is really distributed among all the different work units within the department. Due to how late it is, I'm just going to focus on the active areas we are presently in. The first one is in labor relations. We have 4 bargaining groups, of which 3 are up for negotiations. Our 4 bargaining units represent 916 employees. With the guidance from City Council, we are in the process of negotiating with our police union, which represents 169 employees, our 911 PCA, 47 employees, and our AFSCME, our largest unit, which represents 548 employees. In the organization development, selection, recruitment, we are focusing in on studying and trying to provide services that will continue to work with all the departments in a changing environment, making sure that departments are aligned and that we're able to attract and obtain the best qualified people for the jobs. Approximately 10 years ago, we had about 25% of our employees that were eligible for retirement. Our recruitment, our turnover rate was between 9 and 11%, and right now we're at our turnover rate is around 5.7, which is an all-time low, and our number of people that are eligible for retirement is about 17% of our workforce. Our recruitment strategies have changed during the last several years because of the economy. What we normally had between 4 and 5,000, we're now in excess of 7,500 applications a year. We are very thankful that we have an online applicant tracking system because to process that many applications requires a lot of city time. Going to our training for trucks, we call it our Trucks for Training. The fire department donated several years ago a truck to Chemeketa, and we were able to obtain a number of free training from Chemeketa, and we've trained over 500 city employees, and it's worked out very well, saving in excess of $30,000 for us. Our highlights and significant changes, what we're looking for to do is to complete a citywide maintenance series classification study. This is a long-term program which we're going to be looking at over 30 jobs and talking to about 190 employees. Our labor negotiations is up, and it is a very long process. We're going to continue with focusing on our supervisory training, and then we're also looking at reducing our paper processing. One thing about HR people, we love paper and we love to document, and we have been exploring all options to reduce our paperwork. We have saved some money during this last year, approximately $30,000. Part of it because we've had to reduce our recruitment fees, and we've gone to a lot of online advertisement, which reduced our publication fees. The direct impact in terms of going to a paperless application process, it's eliminating most of our copy and mail services to the tune of about $1,100 to $8,000. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
And next, I believe we have legal. Yes, Rendell Tosh.
Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. It's a pleasure once again to address you. I'll be brief tonight because of the lateness of the hour. Just by way of introduction, I'd like to say that I'll be starting my 10th year with the City of Salem this summer, and that I came to the big city for the legal challenges that it would present. And I have to say that those challenges have been everything that I expected, and that they are what makes the practice of municipal law fulfilling. And I am very pleased to be here. We have a very small segment of the overall budget, $1.7 million, and I'll try to make my presentation as short as my budget is small. We have two major divisions in the City Attorney's Office. We have the City Attorney's Division and the City Recorder's Division. In the City Attorney's Division, we have three practice areas. We have general counsel, we have prosecution, and we have civil litigation. We are a full-service shop. We do all the legal work that the city needs, with the only exception being workers' compensation that we do retain outside counsel for. As general counsel, we have our involvement in almost all aspects of the city's intellectual life. We issue opinions that assist departments with compliance with state and federal law, proper interpretation of our ordinances. We review all the contracts that come through the city. We assist the real estate division in negotiating real estate deals, and then we handle any administrative law issues that come our way. In the prosecution, we have a very busy prosecution section that prosecutes misdemeanors under the city's code, and that includes traffic crimes and also quality of life crimes such as trespass, public indecency, alcohol consumption in the parks. Our civil litigation handles mainly the tort claims against the city, which arise from things like allegations of unlawful use of force by the police department, and also employment issues. Our civil litigator also handles any writs of mandamus or any of the sort of more exotic forms of lawsuits against governments. And if we have to go through a taking of property for right-of-way or for other public use, we also handle those in-house. The city recorder serves as the clerk of the council. The city council is familiar with her. She sits at the rear of the chambers during the meetings and occasionally reads things. She also serves as the public records manager for the city, and she also is the elections official, and so she advises potential candidates. This year, our major accomplishments, I identified 3 things that we've worked on extensively. We have worked on the transaction surrounding the Mill Creek wetlands, which was a purchase of some property from the state of Oregon, a lease back to the state of Oregon, and a series of development agreements and intergovernmental agreements that would ensure that the wetlands mitigation requirement that is attached to the Mill Creek Corporate Center will be completed. And the importance to the city is that this mitigation requirement is necessary for Mill Creek to be truly shovel-ready. So we're getting ready to go, and this was a major accomplishment that involved hours of negotiation and drafting. Second thing the council is currently dealing with is the city's noise ordinance. It was badly in need of an overhaul. It's an old ordinance, and had some problems with internal consistency and kind of antiquated processes. And we had really kind of 2 primary objectives. One was to address a couple of rulings by the municipal court that restricted the scope of the noise ordinance. The second was to simplify the variance process and move to a permitting process. And the third was to address the issue of barking dogs. And this is currently before the council, and I'm sure that we'll be hearing more from the council on the final form of that ordinance. Third thing that we did was we developed with the city manager's office Title VI training. Because the city receives federal funding, we're required to comply with Title VI, and so we worked with the city manager's office to develop a policy, develop a web-based training module for the entire city, and to do group training to individual groups of employees. The importance of this is that if we don't have adequate Title VI training, we could lose our federal funding, and we could, in certain circumstances, be required to return monies. Next year, what we are working on are our challenges. The first will be the completion of the Unified Development Code. I have compared our current land use code to the Winchester House in California. It is a 30-year-old ordinance that has never gone through a comprehensive revision. There are lots of dead ends and blank walls and stairways that don't go anywhere. I have to say that I believe that this is probably the largest project I've worked on in my legal career, and probably the most important thing I worked on as city attorney. I worked closely with Vicki and Glenn Gross and Bryce Bishop, and I think that when this comes to the council, I hope you will be pleased with the work that we've done. This will provide a consistent, understandable land use regulation, and this is really a 20-year project, and we will be hopefully completed with this by the end of this year. The second thing, and this is kind of ongoing, is we have started engaging in civil forfeiture again. Civil forfeiture results when there is an instrumentality associated with a crime that has been taken into the custody of the police, and the city can actually obtain ownership of that property through the civil forfeiture process. Forfeiture, we did a lot of forfeiture back in the 1990s. There were some changes to state law that made it more difficult. There were some additional changes in 2005, and after some consultation with the police department, we decided to move forward with civil forfeiture again. Currently, over the last 9-month period, we started this about 9 months ago, we have obtained title to $61,000 worth of property. We have $37,000 that is currently seized and awaiting forfeiture. And the one limitation that comes with this is that the forfeited money has to be used for public safety purposes. So this is an ongoing program. We anticipate that we will continue to engage in this for the foreseeable future. The third significant change, and this is not necessarily a positive change, is that the Marion County Jail has recently changed its policy regarding confinement of defendants who are in the jail on municipal ordinance violation charges. The jail, due to budget reasons, has told us that they will only lodge misdemeanors for 6 offenses. We're currently in negotiations with the jail over what those offenses are going to be. This is going to require a number of changes in our prosecution program and in court processes. We currently are arraigning people within 36 hours of the time that they're taken into custody. There are a number of crimes that folks have been taken into custody and taken to the jail that we will no longer be able to do that for. This will have a major effect on the quality of life crimes that the city has prosecuted for years. And this is an ongoing process of determining what the impacts are going to be and where we should go. On prosecution, I would like to say, as I've said every year since I've been here, my philosophy is that we should have a zero tolerance for crime in Salem. We've stated that Salem is open for business. I believe we should also state that Salem is closed to crime. And unfortunately, over the years, there's been an erosion in Oregon statewide over funds that are devoted to the court system, to the DAs, and to prosecution of lesser crimes. These are crimes that lead to more serious crimes, and if we can catch those people at the misdemeanor phase, we do more for public safety in the state than I think any of us would imagine. So with that, I always like to close with a metaphor, and some of you know that I like to cook. So the way I view the legal department is we're sort of like a spice, that you may not taste it, you would miss it if it wasn't there, and it kind of holds the whole dish together. So with that, I'll close.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. And now I'll just go through the last part very quickly, and then we do need to hold the public hearing tonight on revenue sharing. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the non-departmental budget. The details are on page 90 and 91 of your book. And what non-departmental includes are those expenses that relate to all departments, so they're not really assigned to one. It's transfers from the general fund to other departments, our debt service, and the $2.5 million contingency. On page 91, under transfers to other funds, you'll see the $1 million that we send to transportation. There's also a total of $500,000. It's the next 5 items that I'd like to put in the budget every year, at least $500,000 that we can use to upgrade our systems or our facilities in the general fund. All except $68,000 of it is allocated, and Member Cannon, you had asked for a potential about some funding for playground equipment in one of your parks. That $68,000, a part of that might be used for that purpose, because that would be a facility that we would need to spend maintenance money on. So there's some additional funds there. You can see on page 90 under intracity interdepartmental billings, the $3.6 million is the general fund money for parks that then we transfer to transportation. So that's essentially that part of the budget. And that concludes our presentation. I'll just show you this money information very quickly, but we do have, as we talked earlier, this Salem Park Improvement Fund. We still have that in for $60,000 matching grants. So that concludes our presentations of internal services.
All right. So we do need to do the public hearing, but first, do we have any questions for staff? Member Nanke and Member Berger.
2 quick ones. One for information technology. I know back when we were in the previous facility, we were having issues, especially I think it was with DBAs, where no one was being allowed to take vacations, and we were burning people up and then having to pay that extra vacation time that nobody was allowed to use, and made some financial shifts. How are we doing personnel-wise and workload?
Workload, we have a lot of work. We have, we're fully staffed in the DVA area. We have 8 systems and programming staff, 12 in systems and programming. So how are we doing? That's kind of
Are people being able to take a vacation day if they need one?
They're able to and encouraged to take vacation.
Excellent.
Yes, I will tell you, one of the issues that we're facing right now is the workload is pretty heavy. And to really do the amount of work we need to do on the systems we have in the city or the new modules that we'd like to purchase to make work easier, it would take more staff. And one of the things we're doing right now is we've formed an internal committee of department heads to review what are those highest priorities each year on the projects that need to go forward, so that otherwise what happens is IT has 500 requests from all of the departments, and they're trying to meet all of those requests, and we as other departments have to help them have a manageable workload because we can't afford to staff it to the level really it would need to be staffed for a few years, so we've got to manage our expectations.
Excellent. Thanks. And one other for general administration in regards to the tax intercept program.
Yes.
Do people know that they're being intercepted? Or are there people, like 62,000 people in town, that aren't going to get $1,000 that they thought was going to be in their pocket?
I don't know whether that's Judge Aiken or Mr. Mance.
I actually may ask Cheryl Stone, the court administrator, to come and speak to that one.
1,000 people aren't going to get 66,000.
Good evening, Cheryl Stone, Court Administrator for the Municipal Court. To answer your question, we don't send out notification ahead of time, but they do fill out an application by which they give information, and we explain in there that that information could be used for collection purposes. So they're only sent to Department of Revenue if they default on a payment agreement they've already made with the court. So if they become non-compliant with an agreement, a court order that they've already had for payment agreement, their license is suspended. They get notification from DFV of that, and then they're sent to Department of Revenue for tax offset as well.
So it really wouldn't be a surprise to them unless they really weren't paying attention, because they're already being hammered in several different areas?
Right. They would already know that they hadn't made a payment that they had agreed to make with the judge, because they would have stood before a judge and made a payment agreement, signed off on that, filled out an application, provided information, and then not made the payment they agreed to.
Thanks.
All right. One has gone off the list and some more have gone on. So it's Member Cannon and then Motley and Summers. So Member Cannon?
Yes. At this time, it's really, as the city manager just kind of mentioned, a non-departmental issue. But I would move that $10,500 be taken from the non-departmental funds to be used for Nelson Park. And if I can get a second on that, I'll talk to it. Speaking to the motion, essentially what's gone on with Nelson Park for the last 2 years is that those folks have gone out and raised $65,000 on their own in conjunction with the Parks Foundation. They need $10,500 to provide for maintenance in the park. The park was put together about 25 years ago as a donation. It needs maintenance, and this would be the last $10,500 that would be needed. So I think it's a good idea. It's within the realm of the money that we have available, and the people in that community have really gone out and worked real hard for this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Nenke and then Dickey, I think.
Question to make your motion. That was hard dollar transfer, not wish list, correct?
That is correct, yes. And the money is available as indicated by the city manager.
Just so people know.
Okay, and then also after Member Dickey, it's Member Tessler.
Just a question to the maker of the motion. So you're asking for $10,500 for maintenance. I'm trying to just be clear on specifically what the funds would be for.
It would be maintenance of existing facilities in the park. So it would be hard dollars. It would not be continuing maintenance. It would be playground equipment, basketball hoops, nets for the basketball hoops, and for hard benches for the picnic areas.
Member Tessler?
So in concept, I do support that, and I think that's a worthy cause. But this is my question to you. So who's going to pay for that in 3 years? And who's going to pay for that in 5 years? and who's going to pay for that next year, because we don't have any O&M money. So here's the problem. You're going to get your maintenance, and that's great, and it's going to last a couple years, and then the equipment's going to break or something's going to happen, and there's not going to be any money to maintenance it, and you're going to be right back to where you were.
Well, a couple of concepts. The current facilities have been there for 20, 25 years. They need to be replaced. So instead of 2 or 3 years, as might be suggested, this is really looking down the line for 10 or 15 years. The people in this area are maintaining this park and helping the parks folks tremendously. This is the only park in Ward 7 that's actually developed. They've done an excellent job. They need to be congratulated. And with regard to the issue of working with the Parks Foundation and also working with the city staff, they generate 25, 30 people every quarter to go out and work in the park. So the answer to your question is it's a matter of community involvement and community volunteerism that have really made this park last as long as it has. And they really use it a lot.
If I could just add, I think it's a difference between using the word maintenance and how you're both understanding it. As I understand it, this would be purchasing nets or
Yes.
benches. It
Hard-
wouldn't be
hard items.
maintaining the park.
Yeah, hard items.
Yeah.
Anything else on the motion? Oh, okay, go ahead.
So just in response to your discussion, I guess what I'm concerned about is that we are not, it's great that these people fundraise, and I totally commend the community for that, and I totally commend the other community and McKay for doing the same thing, and other communities throughout the city. But the problem is that people want to fundraise for stuff. They don't want to fundraise for staff. And in the past, we've had people fundraise, and they buy equipment, and they do all these great things, but then they get a free pass from the city because the city would just come along and they would take care of everything. And that's not going to happen in the future. It's not going to happen in the future. So I'm very concerned that we're buying equipment, we're making capital investments, but yet we have no plan to take care of the equipment or the investments, and we're not setting aside money to take care of that equipment when it does wear out. If we would have had an O&M fund applied already to that park, we wouldn't even be having this discussion because it would have already been paid for. I guess that's what I'm presenting to you to think about.
Agreed.
And to everybody to think about, because we don't have the money at the city to take care of it. We can't give people a free pass for maintenance anymore.
Member Cannon, you had something else you were going to say? Or?
Oh, I appreciate the comments. The issue is the reason the park has lasted so long as it has is because of the community volunteerism, and they have put their own money into this park. Right now, the facilities are such as they need a cash infusion. They need $75,000. They have raised $65,000. They need $10,500. That's well within the parameters of what the city resources are available. And so I think it's a good use. On the point that you raise, I am very supportive of establishing an operation and maintenance dedicated fund for parks. Parks, I believe, are the true backyard that we have for every person in our community. And so I am very supportive of the McKay Park. I'm very supportive of the downtown Riverside Park. We need to expand our park system, and we can do that. But I think that's a separate issue than my motion.
Okay, Member Berger?
I have a question for staff, just so I understand it. Where in this is the motion asking to take this money from?
On page 91, if you look under 62110, transfers to other funds, there's $68,000 that we have for unspecified asset maintenance projects.
Thank you.
So the motion from Member Cannon and seconded by Member Bennett is to move $10,500 from non-departmental to Nelson Park. Is that the motion?
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? You got your bid in. Okay, two more.
Easy
Go
one.
ahead.
Where is Nelson Park? Just so I locate it in my head.
If you are at Fred Meyer South and you on Madrona and you go due west on Madrona, you go down the hill, and Madrona will end, and when it ends, that's Nelson Park.
Okay.
And it's on the hillside, and it's
Okay.
yeah.
Right before you make a right.
I'm there now. Thank you.
Mayor Peterson?
Thank you. I would just like to make a comment that I agree with what Councilor Tesler is saying in that we really do need to be thinking ahead and looking ahead. I also am so encouraged by the neighborhood in question that has done such a great job of fundraising and putting their own money and their own time into that park. And I think that coming in with the last $10,000 is the right thing for the city to do, because we're so reinforcing a great model that I think we're going to have to be going out and using over and over throughout the community, and that is neighborhoods are going to need to be more engaged with their parks and find resources for the parks, but the city should be a happy partner to that to the extent that we can. And I want to say also that Councilor Tesler and Councilor Dickey, and perhaps I'm missing somebody, have worked really hard on beginning a plan for revenue for parks, and I'm really encouraged by that, and I think that's really exciting, and that's where we have to go. I'm sorry, did I miss somebody else?
Just the guys.
Councilor Bennett and Councilor Nanke have also worked hard on that. I just want to say that's the forward thinking that we have to really get to for our parks, and so I just wanted to make those comments. We have to move forward with parks, and we will, with this kind of great collaboration on the council and working forward. Thank you.
All right. Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Madam Chair, I think there were a couple of people who wanted to make a motion to put items on a wish list.
I actually have.
Oh, you still have one?
I have, yes, when I interrupted our flow to do the motion. All right, Member Motley, followed by Member Summers, if you recall your comments or before we...
I had questions for Mr. Tosh or perhaps Manager Norris. The civil forfeiture money, what fund does that go into? It goes into the general fund?
Yes, sit down. Well, civil forfeitures, actually, maybe Ms. Neville can answer that. I want to make sure I'm correct.
That goes into a trust fund. We have some trust funds set up to receive the forfeiture funds.
Okay, and then it must be spent for police-oriented work projects?
Yes. We have, I don't remember offhand how many of those we have. We have about 2 or 3 different funds depending upon the forfeiture type.
And is our anticipated forfeitures for fiscal 11, are the expenditures of that money already included in the budget somewhere?
Yes.
We already spent that?
Well, it's
Okay.
appropriated.
Okay, thank you. For human resources, for HR, we spend a tremendous amount of money on health and related insurances, medical, vision, dental, life, and disability. Who's responsible for obtaining that health insurance? Is that obtained, is that negotiated by human resources, or whom in terms of acquiring the insurance? And does human resources, and if not, whom else does the negotiations with the unions and or employees for the required health insurances?
Yes, we will be coming back at another meeting and talking about the self-insured funds. Maybe you can answer that quickly, Connie.
We are self-insured for our medical, vision, and dental, and we hire a third party to administer the program, and we do negotiate with our collective bargaining groups, yes.
Your department?
Yes,
Okay.
And we'll be going into detail a little bit more about the medical benefits in 2 weeks.
Okay. And for the information technology folks, I was intrigued about the international employees that we have. I didn't know we had any yet. And this international employment filing expense, et cetera. Are those employees, are they eligible for incentives, and do they participate in PERS, and are they regular classified full-time employees, or are they contracted or temps? Or
They're full-time. They're full-time, full employees.
Okay. And if this isn't too technical, does the filing expense for the H-1B permit, or whatever the right language is that included in their income as taxable then?
No, it is not.
It's not?
No. It doesn't meet the criteria to be in their benefits that I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay, but they are covered by PERS and et cetera.
Yes, they get all the benefits that an employee in that same classification would receive.
Great, great. Thank you.
Okay, Member Summers, Bennett, and Clausen, and we do have a public hearing that the manager tells me we need to do tonight.
First, to Councilor Cannon's request for $10,000. I think the council in the future should sit down and really consider a policy of matching funds. And when a group can come forward with $65,000 and say, okay, we're putting up cash, can't you give us some help? And on some type of percentage basis, counselors get together and give them some funds because they deserve it. Second, this line item in intercity interdepartmental billings, park maintenance, $3,687,020. Why isn't that in park maintenance with the people that are supposed to maintain parks?
You'll see the appropriation is there. This is transferring the money from the general fund to the transportation fund.
Oh, is this simply a transfer?
It's a transfer.
Okay, so it's maintaining what parks? It's all parks?
All parks.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
It's a little confusing. They used to be a general fund department, and there's still a general fund expense, but they're in a different, located in the Public Works Fund.
All of these are transfers, everything in
That's-
non-departmental?
Not everything. Most of it is. Some are special payments, some are dues.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Member Bennett?
Madam Chair, I wasn't sure when it's time to, I really had my hand up. I thought we were headed into the wish list, so I have my hand. We're not doing that yet, right?
Better be.
Are we? I move we place, I have to think about it, excuse me, it's getting late. Neighborhood plans for Northeast Neighbors and Grant Neighborhood on the wish list at a price to be determined and source to be determined by the city manager. We've heard so many numbers about these cost of these neighborhood plans, and we're talking about the first year, not the. I'd really like to have a real number, and I'd like to give the manager a chance to look for where that money most appropriately would come from.
Do we have a second to the motion? All right. Whoops. Who was the second?
I was.
All right, all right. So it's been moved by Member Bennett, seconded by Member Cannon to place on the wish list. I'm sorry, it is late. What was it again?
It's the neighborhood plans for Northeast Neighbors and Grant to begin that process of doing their neighborhood plans.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Member Dickey?
Thanks. I'll try and be coherent because it is kind of late. I support the idea. I think it's a really good idea that the neighborhoods start looking at their outdated plans. And I'll vote for your motion, but I do just kind of want to call out that we have 19 neighborhood associations, and we have never discussed this on the floor of the Budget Committee, on the floor of the Council. There may be other neighborhood associations out there going, what? There are resources to update our plans, and as soon as we start this ball going, you know, it might be something that we're going to have them come into Council or come into Budget Committee and saying, where's our piece of the pie? I know that in my neighborhood association, a few years ago, we looked at the plan and went, what a task for us to try and update, because it's way outdated, and it never occurred to us to come to the city and say, hey, could you give us $50,000 to and support. But having said that, I think it's a great idea. I think maybe once we start this, we can develop a model that it won't cost that much for subsequent neighborhoods.
All right, Member Nanke?
Yeah, and that was the purpose, I think, of what we were doing at Morningside. That and the fact that it's going to take a bit to actually get to that point where others can use it as the model. We'll already be into next fiscal year to a certain level, which I suppose is why we left out any fund true dollar amount, which I think would be hard for the city manager to determine.
Well, I would think I'd want to talk to the community development director, but there's only so much our staff is going to be able to do, and this is going to require probably bringing in temporary staff to help with it. And it may be that we want to get for the first 5 or 6 months Morningside going, and then it might be a half a year allocation for the other 2 carrying into the second year. But we'll work out those options and bring that back to the Budget Committee.
Yeah, I'm just sensitive to Councilor or Member Dickey's comments in regards to the balance of the neighborhood associations. Unless their councilors tonight want to go ahead and just make a motion to include all of them. I'm sure we'll hear about it in the neighborhood chairs meeting as well as the Planning Commission, Neighborhood Association Council meetings.
And I'll tell you, we would not be able to handle that type of workload.
Okay, I'm next, and then Member Bennett. I'll just quickly say I agree with Member Dickey. Our neighborhood, and I will support the motion, but I agree that the other neighborhoods didn't know they had that option. In fact, some of us have been told, just don't plan on revising your almost 30-year-old plan because it's just not going to be in the cards. Member Bennett?
I feel almost guilty now.
Well, you should.
But I'll get over it.
Yeah, I'll get over it. No, what I have here are a couple of neighborhoods that are raring to go. And I think the mistake when you have neighborhoods come forward, remember, who all we hear from tonight at the Budget Committee? You know what I'm saying is, this is a neighborhood really ready to go, and what I would hate to do is see it stifled. It also is one of those neighborhoods, the 2 neighborhoods involved, Nen and Grant, are both, like Highland, which has a plan, pretty fragile neighborhoods, and really have a lot going on. There is a great deal of pressure from transportation and other things, and I won't go into all of it, except that these are neighborhoods that really need to get off the dime on this, and they're ready to go, and they're in here asking us, let us get this started. So I really agree with you. I would like to spend time with Vicki and Linda over the next several months figuring out, they'll now have the experience, hopefully, of working with 3 neighborhoods. How do we get this done and bring our comprehensive plan up to date in these neighborhood plans? It has worked so well for West Salem. The outcome, I think even part of it, of the mixed-use zone we heard about earlier, comes out of that kind of planning process. It yields results we don't even know about yet, and it did with West Salem. So I'm really excited about seeing this, at least see what it looks like in terms of cost, where we find the money, and then at a later date we'll decide whether we all want to vote to put it into the budget. This just puts it on the wish list, all I'm asking for.
Let's go. And then I'll make a motion to accept.
All right. All those in favor of the motion? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Member Nanki?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would move a 15-minute extension for the
Second.
purposes of shared revenue hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, I think that the ayes, do we need to?
I think the ayes have it.
No,
We need 10 to be ayes, but I think,
The ayes better be pretty close.
yes.
all right,
We need,
are we ready for Budget Officer Neville?
Fastest public hearing in the world, always.
Yes, it is. Yes, tonight we have a public hearing on state revenue sharing funds. We receive these funds through the state. It's 14% of the state liquor revenues are allocated to cities. The purpose of the public hearing this evening is to allow citizens an opportunity to discuss the proposed uses of the funds. At city council level, we will have a public hearing to talk about the proposed uses of the funds as come forth by the citizens this evening. The city has allocated $1,106,200 in state revenue sharing funds. It's an estimate. We have fully allocated those funds, and we have tied them to police services as many alcoholic beverage infractions impact the police department. Madam Chair?
All right. Is there anyone from the public who wants to testify on this public hearing?
Madam Chair, I move we close the public hearing.
Second. All right, the public hearing is closed. Now, do we need a motion?
Yeah. Ms. Neville, then do we need a motion?
No, we just needed to conduct the hearing. That's fine.
All right, before we adjourn, I forgot to call on Member Clausen during discussions.
I just sent my emailed question to the city manager. We're done.
All right. Unless there is other business, any other business, we are adjourned. Thank you.
what kind of rig